It's May 11th, 2021, Tuesday. The Board of Trustees of Colerain Township convene. And Mr. Baker, roll call, please.
Mr. Unger?
Here.
Mr. Rajgopal?
Here.
Mr. Waller?
Here.
Mr. Jeff Mills will be.
Yes, sir. I recommend that the board go into move to go into executive session in accordance with Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G1, to discuss the employment, compensation, potential dismissal, discipline, promotion, or demotion of public employees. Also in accordance with Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G3, to discuss pending or imminent litigation with the township attorney. Also in accordance with Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G8, to consider confidential information relating to specific business strategy and discuss negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance. And also in accordance with Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G2, to consider the purchase or sale of township property.
Your motion.
I would motion that we go into executive sessions for the reasons described by Mr. Mills.
Second that.
Any discussions
Not from me.
from?
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajgopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Board of Trustees will reconvene shortly. The Board of Trustees convene from the executive sessions. Mr. Baker, roll call, please.
Mr. Unger?
Here.
Mr. Rajgopal?
Here.
Mr. Waller?
Here.
Mr. Mills, anything to report?
There's nothing to report.
Okay. So we have a, would you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you please all remain standing? Let's have a moment of meditation. We see in the news, it's a great toll of pandemic, the lives around the world, especially in India. I speak to the people there. It's very horrible situations. People dying on the street, no hospitals to go. People die. So in our country also, we are struggling with the pandemic. Let us all keep in our prayer and thoughts for the people who are suffering from this pandemic, coronavirus. Thank you. Be seated, please. The next on the agenda is fiscal office report. Approval.
Yes, thank you, Board. I have the minutes from the regular Board of Trustees meeting for April 27th, 2021. Just ask for your approval.
I would motion that we approve the minutes from April 27th, 2021.
I second it. Any discussions?
Jeff, I had sent you one correction right at the very end of the adjournment. Did you
Yes.
get that in there? Okay, thank you. No other comments from me.
Any further discussions?
Mr.
Yeah, motion
Unger?
to- Roll call, please.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajgopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Thank you. The next in the agenda is a presentation. I have a motion to add one more in this thing that's from Metro. The program, the reinventing Metro. We have a gentleman, Daryl Haley, CEO and General Manager, Glad, from also Vice Presidents here. They'll be giving a presentation on the Metro. I met at the first meeting with Mr. Daryl Haley, and he's have a very innovating ideas about how Metro and the township work together to help to build our economy and our infrastructures. They call them, I saw in the meetings, is a soft infrastructures, how we can develop. And they will tell more detail about this, very enthused about this thing. Then later on in the meeting, we have a, so.
I would motion that we amend the agenda to include the guest Mr. Rajagopal has brought on.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Any discussions?
No.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Thank you. Gentlemen, you ready to go? You want to? Go ahead.
No, that's great. That's great. Yes. Please, and if you just want to let me know when you want me to change the slide, I will move that right along. Thanks.
Thank you all for allowing us to come and speak to you today. We're really
Hold on, sir. The mic.
sorry. We're really excited about what the future holds for transit here in our region. We've begun, we passed the levy in 2020, and we've begun some of the really exciting things that are going on. So I'm going to start the presentation with telling you what we've, some of the things that we've accomplished in the last year. And then the Vice President of Strategic Planning and Development is going to come up, and he's going to talk to you about what the future of transit both looks like in our region as well as in your community, and some of the exciting things that we have coming up. So what really robust transit will do is it will drive economic development in our region. It will improve mobility for all in our region. It will attract new businesses and employers. It'll bring access to not just more jobs, but higher paying jobs. And what that will do is it will lower poverty and crime in our region. It will also improve local and regional quality of life. All of those things will expand our regional connectivity to give people access to jobs, to give them access to health care, to give them more access to education and social services and all the things that they need. So what Reinventing Metro, it's more frequency. So the time difference between the first bus coming and the next bus coming. So it will improve the frequency, and a lot of our service will be about every 15 or 20 minutes, you know, throughout the region. So right now we have a lot of service that only comes once an hour. And on the weekends, it's even a lot longer than that, later in the evening, things like that. This will improve the frequency. So you won't really need a schedule. You go to the bus stop and either there's one coming or there's one right behind it coming, which makes you move through the region, you know, very much quicker. It'll involve a lot of amenities, benches and shelters. It stops really safe places for people to wait for their buses. Transit centers. We've recently built a transit center out in Northside, and if you haven't been there, you get a chance to see it. If you go to our website, there's actually a video on it. It's really nice. It's a really nice, well-lit place for you to connect with buses. We've got real-time signs, which tells exactly what time the buses are coming, you know, in real time. We've got ticket vending machines so you can pay for your fare there. We even have electric car charging ports. So if you have an electric vehicle, you can charge your vehicle while you move throughout the region. And as we change our buses and we move into electric buses, we actually ran conduits. So when we start bringing electric buses in, we'll be able to charge buses there as well. So a lot more amenities for our customers and our future customers, a longer span of day. We don't have any service today that runs 24 hours. So it's a challenge for those people that work a second shift or third shift. Starting on May the 30th, we'll have 7 routes that will run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And all of those things connect to make your travel time through our region on a bus much faster, which then helps us compete with a car. So the Reinventing Metro plan gives us access with bus to 20,000 more jobs accessible by Metro, 740 more employers, and a total of 850 million total wages accessible by Metro. So the service that we're rolling out the end of May, the 24-hour service, 50% of the jobs in Hamilton County will have access to that 24-hour service, as well as additional 10,000 plus employers will have access to that 24-hour service that they don't have today. Khaled's going to come up, and he's going to talk about some of the improvements, both region-wide as well as in your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl, and thank you for inviting us. In a nutshell, because I'd like to focus more about what's coming to Colerain. These are the improvements that are happening in literally 3 weeks, May 30th. And this is just phase 1 of reinventing Metro. We have 4 or 5 phases coming over the next 4 to 5 years. So in phase 1, again, May 30th this year, just around the corner, there will be improvements on 10 routes, 7 of which will start running 24 hours a day. That's a first in our community. And these are the main corridors that serve most of the where the jobs are and the activities, especially in the uptown area, downtown, and all the way throughout the entire region. The other routes will also see significant improvements services on the weekend, which currently we have a major deficiency of that on most, if not all, of our routes. So there'll be significant improvements on the weekend service. Next, please. That's pretty much the same information. In addition to improving the fixed route buses, which are the big buses, we call them fixed route. And as I said, there are 4 or 5 phases over the next few years. In addition to improving the fixed route, we're also looking into introducing a new type of service, which is the bus rapid transit, or BRT. And these take advantage of main corridors where we have very high ridership, and we want to move passengers in the fastest way possible along these corridors so that they can get to their destinations in a timely fashion and not waste time just sitting on the bus. So the best implementations of BRT is to separate the buses from the rest of the traffic. And if you look at that picture, you see kind of like a concrete barrier between the cars and the buses. That allows the buses to have their own lane so they can travel much faster and cut the travel time of the passengers on that. They will have specially designed stations at strategic locations. These are big stations. They're not shelters because the demand is higher. We have more people waiting there, and they will blend within with their surroundings. They will use usually BRTs will utilize specially designed buses to accommodate that type of service. Right now, half of our fleet has free Wi-Fi and charging ports. By the end of this year, all of the buses will have that. Certainly, that's something that will be on the BRT buses as well. Next, please. We have 4 corridors as of now that we're considering for BRT, which are the Montgomery Road, Reading Road, Hamilton, as well as Glenway. We will be doing a study sometime next year to identify 2 of these 4 that would be phase 1 for BRT. And then, as we develop that, we'll start looking at other corridors as well, because this region is very dynamic. Things are changing quite a bit. We know there are major interesting things happening in Colerain as well. So we will be taking, another look at what other corridors would benefit from such a service down the road. Next, please. The other type of new service we're looking into introducing, as a matter of fact, we'll be hiring a consultant very soon. We're reviewing their proposals, is to look at mobility on demand. It's a special type of service where it's confined to a small geographical area, maybe 4 square miles, 6 square mile area. And we could have multiple of, a number of these in our region. And we have small vehicles that will provide this kind of neighborhood circulator service to take passengers from their home or work to shopping and so on and so forth. So it's a more frequent service, more tailored to the needs of that particular community. So the consultants will be looking at the entire region and then identifying certain neighborhoods. I'm not making any promises, but Colerain seems to be, a good candidate for that. But again, we're not making any promises at this point until the study is complete. Next, please. So specific to Colerain, just to put things in perspective, I'm starting with this slide, which is the existing conditions. So right now, Colerain is served, by 3 routes. Route 17 And Route 17 has 4 branches, and it's Colerain is served by one of those branches, which is the North Gate branch, the dotted blue line that goes on Campton, from Hamilton, Campton, and then Colerain. The frequency on 17 isn't that great. On the North Gate branch, it's about 40-50 minutes weekdays. That's not a good frequency by any standard. And worse yet, there's no Sunday service on that branch. Again, this is current. Route 19 also serves Colerain. It has a slightly better frequency than 17, and it has weekend service. Again, the frequency on the weekend isn't that great, but at least there's some kind of weekend service. And Route 74, which is an express route, starts from Northgate and then goes on Cheviot down to then 74 to downtown, and that seems to be a reasonably decent service as of now. So come May 30th, again 3 weeks from now, we'll be introducing Sunday service on Route 17. So we will have Sunday service on Route 17 in about 3 weeks. The frequency will match will match Saturday service frequency, which is about 60 minutes. Again, that's a start, but things will get better as we move on. The span of service on Sunday starts from 6 a.m. until 9 p.m. Next, please. Route 19 for next year, 2022, we'll see quite a bit of improvements on the off-peak frequencies as well as on the weekend frequencies. So buses will start running 30 minutes or better on the weekends as well as off-peak service. Next year, the plan is to also introduce a new route, 61, that will connect Northgate with Kenwood on Galbraith. So it starts on Northgate, runs on Galbraith all the way to Kenwood with about 20-30 minute frequency, and it will run 7 days a week. Another route that we'll introduce next year is 62, that will connect Forest Park with Glenway. So it starts at Forest Park, and then things are still a little bit fluid, but it could go on West Camper and then either Hamilton and or Pepin to Colerain and then North Bend to Glenway. And that will have about a 30-minute frequency on weekdays and 60 minutes on weekends. Next, please. Thank you. The following year, 2023, we'll try to make improvements on 74. Right now, 74, it's called Express, but on North Bend, Cheviot is not so much of an express just because of the number of stops it has to make and the traffic. So we're looking at two scenarios: either take it on the belt and then connect it to 74 all the way to downtown, skipping North Bend and Cheviot, or keep it on Cheviot, but then don't make all of these stops between Northgate and Sam's Club. So we're still looking at both of these options. But the point is, we want to make it a true express so people can get to downtown much faster. And we'll make some improvements on the span of service as well. Next, please. And then the following year, we'll make further improvements on Route 17. This is still, in the drawing board stage. We're still, looking at other options as we make improvements this year. And next year, we'll still reevaluate what's going to come and make further improvements. To put everything together, next one, please, this is how it will look in 4 years from now, the service in Colerain, bare minimum. Because as I said, still looking at how things are evolving, and we need to match the demand. But that's how it will look in about 3 to 4 years from now, with all of this service. Not to mention that the mobility on demand as well, the study. If Colerain is one of those neighborhoods that will receive mobility on demand in phase 1, maybe in a couple of years later, again, a good portion of that area would be served, by mobility on demand circulator, neighborhood circulators, or something similar to that. Next. The other program that we just started earlier this year is the Everybody Rides Metro, and actually that was part of our ballot on the levy. So SORTA is dedicating $500,000 every single year to that program, the Everybody Rides Metro, where certain organizations, 501c organizations, will, working with SORTA, they will receive about half, 50% reduction on the fares that they would purchase to give to their constituents, either employees or customers and so on. And this has great benefit to our community, just to make sure that people can get to their destinations, whether they're to work or interviews or whatever. The other program is the Transit Infrastructure Fund. And again, that was part of our ballot where, next slide, 25% of the sales tax that we're collecting, which we're estimating going to be between $25 and $30 million every year, will go towards the infrastructure improvements. And it's similar to the Integrating Committee program. The difference is roads where buses run or are within 3/4 mile of a bus route, those roads and infrastructure will be eligible for this grant money. We've put out the call for proposals or for projects April 1st, and communities, townships, municipalities within Hamilton County have until June 30th to submit on their projects. Once we receive the projects June 30th, we'll start the evaluation process of these projects. We've scheduled about 2 months for that process, July and August. Again, similar to the Integrating Committee process, we'll evaluate them, score them, and then rank them. And then they will be, the recommendations will go to our board, SORTA board. They'll review them, and then they go to the Integrating Committee for their final approval. And then, the projects or the municipalities to receive the funds will enter into agreements with us Q4 of this year, and then we'll make the funds available early next year. And this has been, really exciting for our community because, as we all know, quite a bit of the infrastructure requires improvements, upgrades, and so on. So it's helping the communities as well as helping transit to move faster and provide better service to our communities. And that's it. We have to answer any questions you may have.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. So folks know, you can sign up for service. I get emails sent to my phone. When I began as trustee, I signed up for that because I thought it would be good to learn more, and if there's delays in the system or anything, they send out an email or text and it comes out. So it seems like I get one a day of Route 45 or something's having an issue. And I have seen the North Side Transit Center. It's very nice. When the sales tax was passed, I'm sure you didn't anticipate that everything would be shut down, and I'm sure that's affected that first year revenue. Now, in order to get money to get some of these projects and services started, has any of that anticipated revenue been bonded out, or are you just working as it trickles in?
So what we've done to make sure that we roll out 100% of what we promised the community, we should have been running the changes out the end of last year. So we just put them off till the middle of this year. So instead of the new service starting in December of last year, it's starting in the end of May of this year. And we're really excited to say that we found ways to cut costs, as we constantly do, to make sure, we're really
So
good
you're working
stewards.
on a trickle-in model, so none of it's been bonded out and
No.
anticipated revenues? Great. That's probably the more fiscally prudent way to do it. I would hate to bond out some of this in the name of anticipating revenues, and because we all saw what happened with the stadiums where the revenue didn't come in, and this way you're working within your
Absolutely.
quarterly or semi-annual income. So
And we're doing a lot of things, and we've talked a little bit about, benches and shelters. So we signed an agreement with a vendor, because we were paying to place benches and shelters throughout the community, really nice, safe places, well-lit places for people to catch the bus. We bid out and signed an agreement with a company that's going to place 405 benches, about 400 benches and 205 shelters. And it won't cost the organization any money at all to buy them or to install them. They're going to sell advertising in the shelters and on the benches, which will pay for the cost of placing the benches in the shelters and installation. So we're finding other ways to generate additional revenue. We believe that when we build this very robust transit system, that it will attract businesses and it'll attract talent to our community, which will increase our ridership, which will also increase the revenue that we bring in. And you know, as the businesses change from a 9 to 5, there's a lot more service industries that are working not Monday through Friday, but off days and second shift and third shift. And we've not connected to those businesses very well. This transit system that we're building will connect to those second shift jobs, those third shift jobs, the jobs out in the county. So we'll build a robust transit center system. It will bring in additional revenue, which will allow us to put more out.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I agree. I think the biggest problem with Metro in the past is it's not connected the right way. I mean, it's from a model from the 60s and 70s, and now we're getting some people to the jobs they need to go to. I do have a couple concerns that maybe you can help alleviate. So you mentioned 400 benches and 205 shelters with selling advertising. So we're in the middle of a, what did we say, 6-year lawsuit to get rid of bench advertising. I don't know if that's part of the calculus, but that's a home rule ordinance that we have in Colerain. I'd hate to replace one set of advertisements with another. I don't know if there's flexibility on that. And the other thing I'm more than concerned about is what traffic studies. We're throwing a lot of buses on Colerain, and you know, it's Colerain can be a hectic place. I know that we've talked in this body about some pull-outs and pullovers and things like that. Have the increased routes come with traffic studies on what that's going to mean for the average commute for somebody in an automobile? Or
there are a lot of studies coming, but what we believe will happen is the increased bus service will actually do just the opposite, because it'll get people out of their cars and there'll be less automobiles on the road and more people in the buses. One of the challenges we've had with our system is it's a hub and spoke system. In order to move about our community, almost all of the buses, you have to come in the downtown, transfer downtown, and then go back out to your final destination. What we're building is the north-south, very frequent service, and then we're going to overlay crosstown routes out throughout the route. So you'll no longer have to come all the way into downtown, transfer to a bus to go back out. So that's going to really speed up the time it takes you to get from your point of origin to your point of destination on a bus. And we're positive that what's going to happen is more people are going to get out of their vehicles and get on the buses. So it's going to create less traffic congestion on the road, because more people will be on the bus versus the single driver in their car.
okay, thank you for coming.
Mr. Haley, when I first met you, you talked about the funding, the available, the grant money. It won't cost any money to the township. We talked about mostly the pullout, bus pullout, which is in the peak hours and everything, costs tremendous traffic jam in the Colerain Avenue. And you encourage us to apply for that grant. And Jackie, is Jackie here? There she is, yeah. She's on the top. She's writing a grant, and it won't cost any money. And you also mentioned about the pullout, you also do the lighting and landscape and accessible for the handicap. People can to move and use it. So this is a phenomenal project, and it's going to make a lot of change in the Colerain Avenue, this pullout.
So Helette touched on that. So the integrating committee today that doles out grant dollars for roads and bridges, they dole out about $10 million a year for roads. The infrastructure funds that are coming from the tax levy, what it will do is it'll generate about $30 million a year to fix roads and bridges. And these are roads and bridges within 3/4 of a mile on roads that Metro buses travel on. So it's about 3 times as much money as the integrating committee puts out grants for today. Now the integrating committee's grants won't go away. This is an additional $30 million. And we'll do call for projects once a year, and then we'll award those projects once a year. So we look forward to you all applying for some of those grant dollars.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for this great presentation.
Thank you so much for giving us some time today.
Thanks for coming to Colerain.
Mr. Rajagopal, the next item on the agenda is a presentation of a letter of gratitude from the Colerain Township Trustees to the Catholic Charities, volunteers, public services staff, police department staff for the USDA Farm to Families program. And that letter has been presented to Mr. Unger here.
And you would like me to read it, and you're going to start me out with a name I can't pronounce.
Okay.
You can try.
Tony Styritz? Oh, okay. Hi, Tony. Dear Mr. Styritz, it's with great pleasure that we are writing to you today on behalf of the Colerain Township to thank you for all you and your organization have done for the residents of Colerain Township. The USDA Farmers to Families Free Food Box Distribution Program was a great success. This success was due largely in part to the tireless efforts of April Hoke, the Food for All coordinator. Mrs. Hoke was paramount in the efficiency of the food distribution, resulting in feeding thousands of area families over a 7-month period. It was truly remarkable to witness the collaboration of Catholic Charities Southwestern Ohio and the Free Store Food Bank, as well as the multitude of volunteers. The employees of the Colerain Township Public Services Department commented that the events were well planned and, along with the coordinated efforts of the Colerain Police Department, who coordinated the traffic flow, enabled the residents to be served easily and efficiently. Again, thank you for choosing Colerain Township as one of the region's distribution locations for the USDA Farmers to Families Free Food Box Distribution Program. We appreciate the working relationship we have established, and we look forward to partnering with you again in future endeavors. Respectfully, the trustees of Colerain Township. And I would motion that we, do we need a motion to approve this letter?
Sure.
I would motion that we approve this letter and sign it.
I'll second it.
I have no other comments.
No, it's a great service you guys do for our community, and there's a timely, fashionly you're doing this. We need that for our community, this type of programs.
I'll just add, thank you so much, for selecting us and working with us in multiple distributions. And certainly my eyes are open to the great work that you do. I've taught in Catholic schools for 25 years, so I'm kind of aware of it, and I certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. And they are signing it right now, and if
So
you
we
want
need
to
to-
present, and I'll take a picture.
I think we need to vote.
And would you like to come up?
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
So did I pronounce your name correctly? You did. Oh, good. Well done.
You want to?
Right, yep. Would you like to stand in front there? I'll take your picture.
Sure.
Oh, come on.
Okay. Matt and I will just stand back
Yeah,
here. We'll just be the nice background. Yes.
You like the purple tie, though?
Yeah.
Is that an elder tie?
Many people think so.
All right. Very good. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Would it be okay for me to say thank you?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Thank you, Board, for this recognition. It truly is an honor to partner with you in this very important endeavor. I speak on behalf of all of us at Catholic Charities, our staff, our volunteers, and our many supporters. We very appropriately prayed for those who have been so impacted by the pandemic at the start of this meeting. And as that tragedy continues, perhaps one of the small silver linings has been to see the rays of hope that have come through because of so many of us working together to serve the most poor and vulnerable in our communities who've been impacted by this. As a Catholic organization, we believe that it's the Holy Spirit and God that's pushing us forward in all of this, and I think God smiles when they see the best of humanity coming through. So thank you for partnering with us, and all of those who are especially called to civil service, the administrators and police department. It's been an honor to work with everybody, And I also just want to especially thank April Hoke. This letter is going to her because it's her tenacity, her passion, and just her wonderful nature that's guided us through this whole process. So thank you again. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Read this, or you want Matt to read the next one?
Matt, go ahead.
Sure.
Mr. Rajagopal, the next item on the agenda is a letter of commendation for the employees of the Public Services Department.
And I will read this. On this day, May 11th, 2021, on behalf of Colerain Township, we'd like to officially commend Jackie O'Connell, who just left, Roger Krebs, Jeffrey Payne Jr., Jacob Carter, and Tawana Moulter. On Wednesday, April 21st, 2021, the new playground at Colerain Park, which is under construction and scheduled to open this spring, was severely and devastatingly vandalized with spray paint. The paint was on most surfaces of the new playground, including construction equipment. Acting quickly, the Parks Department went into full cleaning mode. They worked for hours in the pouring rain, scrubbing all the surfaces to remove the paint before it became permanent. Fortunately, most of the paint was removed and there is little remaining of the graffiti. When the damage was observed, the Colerain Police Department responded and began an investigation. The investigation is ongoing as they continue to follow leads to find those responsible. Ms. Moulter posted pictures of the damage on social media in an attempt to get information from anyone who may have observed the offenders in action. Ms. O'Connell met with local media and the incident was televised. The community remains outraged at such destruction. Jackie O'Connell is commended for her leadership and the professionalism she displayed in handling of this occurrence. Tawana Moulter is commended for the postings on social media, which ignited the community to be involved to find those responsible. Roger Krebs and his team are commended for their quick actions and time and diligence in removing the graffiti from Colerain Park and the new playground. With these efforts, the playground is still scheduled to open this spring. Respectfully, the trustees of Colerain Township. So I will motion. I will motion to adopt the May 11th is commendation day for Jackie O'Connell, Roger Krebs, Jeffrey Payne Jr., Jacob Carter, and Tawana Moulter.
I'll second it. In discussions.
No, but thank you for all your hard work on the, and continuing work on that. Thank you. Thank you for all your work on the project, and I'm sure there's plenty to do to keep it maintained, so thank you.
Thank you, Jackie, and the friends here there sitting next to you. You guys are amazing. I'm so proud of you guys, and I walk every day to the Heritage Park. I see that a lot of hard work. I also see other parks. You guys do a wonderful job keeping our park nice, beautiful, and providing a service to our community. I just want I just want to warn the criminals who vandalize. We're going to catch you. We're going to catch you. You know, this park is ours. You don't come around and vandalize it, and we're going to prosecute you. And you know, you guys work hard to clean up that. Worked all day. Thank you very much for that. You want to?
Did we have a second officially?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me.
Any further discussions?
Matt motioned and Raj seconded.
Okay, we got go for a call, please.
Stronger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
All right.
And Mr. Rajagopal, there are, as tokens of our gratitude, there are challenge coins for each of the folks, and they should be here. So could Ms. O'Connell, Mr. Krebs, Mr. Payne, Mr. Carter, and Ms. Moulter, would you please come on up?
While you're staging, I just want to say thank you for this, and really it was a team effort on getting it cleaned up. The guys, though, they worked in the pouring rain to get that cleaned up so that it wouldn't stick. So it was a labor of love for all of us. This whole playground has been. So to see it finally getting the surface down and coming together, and then this to happen, it was really it was soul crushing for some of us. So we are very appreciative of this, that you recognize the work that we have done, but really the credit goes to the team for working so hard to get it ready to open.
Raj can hand those out. Okay, all right. We'll go ahead and snap a picture here. 3, 2, 1. Awesome.
Thank you. Mr. Rajagopal, there's the commendation that needs to be signed by yourself and Mr. Hunger and Mr. Baker.
Which one is that?
We'll wait till Jeff comes back.
Okay, very good. The next item on the agenda is a proclamation recognizing May 8th as Matt Croxton Sr. Day in Colerain Township, and I believe you have a copy of the
I
proclamation.
have a copy of it here. Do you want me to read it, or you want to read it? Okay. I'll read it and then we'll motion. Proclamation recognizing May 8th, 2021 as Matt Croxton Sr. Day in Colerain Township, Hamilton County, Ohio. Be it proclaimed by the Township Trustees of Colerain Township that whereas Matt Croxton Sr. was 99 years of age and a resident of Colerain Township for many years, and whereas Matt Croxton Sr. was a celebrated United States Army veteran who was awarded the European, African, Middle Eastern Service Medal with 1 Bronze Star, the World War II Victory Medal, and the American Service Medal, and whereas our community has a continuing sense of gratitude to those who have given so much in the defense of the freedoms which we all continue to enjoy, and whereas Americans have an abiding faith in the ideals and strengths on which our nation was founded, in our democratic process, and in the men and women of the armed forces who have served our country so well, and whereas Matt Croxton Sr. recently passed away, and we honor and thank him for his service to his community and to our nation. Be it proclaimed that the Colerain Township Board of Trustees does hereby recognize May 8th, 2021 as Matt Croxton Day in Colerain Township, adopted the 11th of May, 2021. And I would motion that we approve this proclamation.
I'll second.
Any discussions?
I was lucky enough and of the age where I did get to know a lot of World War II veterans, and a lot of them are into their late 90s, and what a wonderful bunch of folks. So
People like Mr. Matt Croxton sacrificed a life serving our country. Because of their sacrifice, we enjoy the freedom. And it is great honor for the Colerain Township to proclaim, to recognizing Mr. Matt Croxton Sr.
I'll just add that, 3 words, the greatest generation. And I think that's applicable here. And thank you so much for Mr. Croxton's service to our country.
was there anyone here from his family?
I don't believe so, but we'll make sure that they get.
Okay,
this.
great. Thank you. He's got it.
Okay.
Very good. And that's all the presentations we have this evening. Oh, was there a vote? Yeah.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
The next in the agenda is citizens' address. Gentlemen, somebody? Who's it?
Our policy for citizens' address, could you go ahead and refresh since we've brought people back into the room?
Sure. Now that we're back to in-person meetings, the policy is to have folks who want to deliver their address to come on out and share their thoughts with us here in person. Of course, at any time, anybody can email me or the trustees or Mr. Baker or anybody on staff with their thoughts, and we'll be sure to read those and take those into consideration.
Right, yeah, he's here.
And I believe that the time limit is 5 minutes.
Yes, I'd like to keep in 5 minutes so that other people have the opportunity to talk, address their concerns. Mr. George Reader.
Good evening.
Your-
Yeah, get that on. First of all, I want to thank the Colerain Police Department for the honor that they gave me back in December, recognizing me for being in the service overseas and everything that they collected with Home Depot and Lowe's and all that. The second thing is, I like to ask, why was I charged $863 to take me from 2759 Niagara Street to Mercy Hospitals in Fairfield? 7 miles, that equals up to $163 a mile. Now, everybody I asked where I live at thought that riding in a squad was a community service. Is it?
No, Chief would have that information.
Let him go on for it. That's, you got more to say that you finished?
Well, that's one question. The second question is on Niagara Street from Gibraltar to Pippin Road is nothing but a drag strip. We've got motorcycles and cars that are riding up and down that street doing better than 60 miles an hour. We've got a lot of new kids that just moved in on the block, and I'm afraid one of them's going to get hit. They're blowing the stop sign at Gibraltar. I mean, they don't even stop for it anymore. And by the time they get from Gibraltar to my house, they're already at 60 miles an hour, and the speed limit's 25. I've had motorcycles that are doing better than 70 flying up and down this street. So I'd like to call that attention to get, we've been trying to get speed bumps to be put on that street. Something's got to be done. I mean, it's getting ridiculous to watch these cars that are souped up. We got one that lives up there off of Manhattan Street driving a Mustang. This guy, he leaves from Manhattan, comes down to Niagara. By the time he gets from Niagara to Pippin, he's already in fourth gear. This guy flies. He does it when he goes by my house. He does that because I questioned him on it. So, I mean, the speeding is getting ridiculous. Something's got to be done. We're asking in the lower part of Niagara Street, can we get speed bumps put in there? Something's got to be done. Even stop signs from each street coming down to Manhattan, from Gibraltar down there, something to stop this traffic. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. Like I said, we just had a bunch of new kids move in on the block. They're playing with their balls. Sometimes they go out in the street. You know, I mean, that's bad that it'll happen, but at 60 miles an hour, there ain't going to be nothing left of them if they get hit. So if you guys can take that into consideration and see something about it, let me know.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And our fire chief Walls is sitting right back there in the back row, and our police chief is back there in the corner. And
I know.
if
I
you-
know him.
I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to him, but I'm sure they would talk to you out in the rotunda
Okay,
to
thank
answer your
you.
questions.
Thank you for your service,
Thank you
too.
very much. The next, Jerry.
Jerry Durger. Did you want to speak, sir?
Would you like to speak? No? Okay. Mr. Rich McVeigh?
Evening.
Since I'll return to the last meeting a little bit and cover some comments, because as you set it up, I made some comments and you guys responded, and I want to get back at things you said. I did mention in the last meeting that the contract that you guys approved with Rumpke in your meeting on the 17th left a lot to be desired. Cost management was asking for up to $200,000 to do little over the 5 years of the contract. How they even got into the mix is kind of hard for me to understand. The whole process, I mean, we're going to get an improvement tonight. We're down to, I think, a $20,000 charge for cost management that Rumpke's agreed to pay. And it seems like they have a different view of how much that process that cost management was involved in was worth than the trustees did. I watched your session on the 17th when you approved this contract, and there really wasn't any discussion at all about the 10-cent charge that cost management was talking about. You voted 3-0 to approve it. Relative to the other board commitments and comments I made in the last meeting, I asked about the status of this getting a new sign over I-275. I learned there's no support to do that you want to do landscaping instead. You do have money in the budget to do the sign, it looks like. You do have some ideas to do the sign. You don't have any money in the forecast to do landscaping. I understand you're trying to get volunteers to do that. I asked what the board was doing relative to getting problems dealt with donation boxes, and the comment was that that's a difficult issue, and essentially that the staff, you don't have the staff to deal with it at the present time. I asked about the status of traffic calming devices in Northbrook, because we've been asking for things like that for 5 years, or the residents have. You just heard it tonight, there's speeding issues. Mr. Mills responded that they're too expensive or very expensive. And I think that's because the design that he's chosen to champion, or at least to favor, is one with chicanes, and they are more expensive. It's probably much cheaper to do speed tables rather than bumps. They're all over the city. Fire departments put up with them, police departments put up with them. Maybe you'll take this resident's concern and do something with it. I asked about when we'll be getting a sidewalk along Joseph Road, and I was told that there were right-of-way issues. Remember that in the summer of 2019, residents were asked what were their priorities for road work, or sidewalks rather, here in the township, and the two that came at the top were Pippin Road sidewalk and Joseph Road. And I think on the point scale, Pippin was maybe 98 and Joseph was 97. They were really, really close. And thanks to Raj, we've got some funding to do the work on Pippin, and I think that's going to maybe be installed by 2024 if I look at your schedule. But when we've talked about the Joseph Road as far back as August of 2019, we were told the residents, or the residents' council, didn't really want to have that on their property. And I did some quick research on that, and I shared it with Assistant Administrator Weckbach. I'll give you a copy of it. Just about a half an hour in the ORC code shows that you guys have the ability to do what you need to do. You have the authority, you have the will to do it. And I don't understand why you're not doing it. It's going to take a long time. We can see that. I mean, Roz jumped on this thing on Pippin Road and went up to Columbus and got some money, and it takes a while to do all that stuff, but we're not starting anything. And I was told it was because we have right-of-way concerns. Well, you guys know what it was like when we were repairing Jackie's Drives and that whole area in the neighborhood and down Burnside. We had residents' front yards all towed up, putting in roads and sidewalks and sewer systems. So these people in this complex should understand that you guys have the authority to put this sidewalk in. And there shouldn't be anything holding you back. You just need the political will. And I'd like to see a fight for these residents, these kids. I mean, I heard you talk in the last meeting how concerned you are about the safety of kids walking in the street. And here's an example where you can put that concern to work. You know, get out there, get your attorney to go talk with their hospital, their association, and let them understand what the law is, and that we're going to put a sidewalk in. That's all you guys have to say. Now, you can ask them to pay for it. You have the ability to do that. You don't have to do that. You can ask them to pay for a part of it, or you can have the township do all of it. I mean, that's up to you, because you have the authority to do that. But there should be no reason for the delay. I asked what was happening in the Colerain Corridor study, and Raj mentioned that we're seeking stimulus funds that are now available, and that was good to hear, but we're not clear on what you're asking for. So it's hard to be transparent on that and to contact a trustee and to hold them accountable about things that we're not aware of. So it'd be great to understand what you guys are talking about relative to the Colerain Corridor and what specifically you want to do. I encourage you to do it, but we don't know what you're doing. I also asked, I didn't know what you guys are doing about Northbrook, and Mr. Mills said that you're doing a lot of things, and apparently the residents are satisfied, so if they're satisfied, it's not a problem with me. I said, why is the board researching the cost of becoming a city? It's in your strategic plan, and you gave no response. Who thinks we want to be a city? Now, relative to this meeting, a couple of comments I want to make. I think you have a contract for Wi-Fi in the package. I don't know, do you have to offer bids on this kind of stuff? I mean, what's your policy? I don't know. If you don't have to, I guess you don't have to. Do you have any idea what the expected fees are? I mean, we have to pay for Wi-Fi service at my house. How do you guys determine where to put this stuff? And what's next? You know, what's next? Where do you go next? Who owns the equipment and maintains it? Was this stuff in the strategic plan? I think the CARES Act of 2020 had some funds available to do this kind of stuff. And I know, Jeff, if we're going to do it, maybe we don't have to use block grant stuff. Maybe there's CARES money available to do it. I don't know. But I read that there was some funds made available for Wi-Fi service in some limited areas. So if we need to do it, you know, and you guys think it's the right thing to do, and if you don't need bids, and you know who's going to maintain it, and how much it's going to cost to maintain it, and how that's all going to be managed, then maybe you ought to go ahead. But it seems to me like there's a lot of apparent loose ends. On the contract with Plattenberg, it's not a lot of money, but it seems to me it's taken an extra long time for the finance director to get his department in shape. You know, he's been here a while. Takes 3 or 4 months to get the stuff listed on the website. And I understand there's a lot of stuff going on, but I mean, how much time do you give this guy to get his department under control? You have any questions?
I'll address them in my trustee remarks. Thank
I'll
you.
have to come back next week, and we'll do this over again, Dan.
Well, I can comment on everything you said, but we've got other speakers.
Mr. McVeigh, all the questions that you asked at the administrative report, Mr. Mills will answer some of these questions.
Good.
Thank you, sir.
I'll be back next week.
Thank you. We'll answer. Okay, Mr. Keith Miller.
Good evening, neighbors, board, Lake.
Good evening, sir.
My concerns are still redundant because I see $4 million of our school money still sitting over there at Rumpke. When we need a sidewalk on Pippin, as we just heard, the kids are walking in the street, and when it's raining, they're walking in water. They can't walk on the grass because they'll just be soaking wet before they get to school even. So we already had a kids hit because there's no sidewalk. The school board and Jeff Ritter give $4 million of the school money to Rumpke for his road and his sidewalk to nowhere. That money needs to be taken back and put Pippin Road sidewalk in for the kids. Rumpke don't care about these kids. He stole $4 million from the school. Do you really think he cares about the kids? Let's talk about something else. with that road. We done, our school money's done paid for that road. That's not mine. I pay my healthy taxes. But my neighbors pay that tax, and it still upsets me. What I worry about now is the fire levy. Are we going to put a firehouse on Rumpke's property with our tax dollar? Because that will be a sin. You remember that, Mills. I don't want my tax dollar for the fire, putting a firehouse on Rumpke's property so he can control. He does not need that control. We need to control Rumpke, not Rumpke controlling us.
Hey, sir, the firehouse is not going to be there now.
It was talked about
Okay,
in this room
yeah.
already. Anything's been talked about in
Yeah,
this room.
let's talk, something is not happen, but it's not going right now. So let's talk something problems we're gonna deal right now.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I think we need to get money back from Rumpke, though. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. The next on the agenda is, citizen address, Ms. Kathy Moore, please.
Good evening. I have several questions. The first of them being about the park vandalism. Did we have cameras working at that facility, that park that day?
We'll answer. Go ahead. We'll get this.
Can someone just say yes or no?
Well, I think if we put in Wi-Fi, we'd be able to put in cameras that would work, this is all kind of works together. I don't know if there were any cameras there that day or not, but go ahead and speak your piece.
Years ago, they had installed cameras at the parks, from what I understood. You hired a new intern for $15 an hour to work 28 hours a week. What is this intern doing?
Go ahead.
Jeff will address that.
Jeff will address that, and go ahead or speak up all
I
your
really would like
concerns.
to know if any of the board knows what this person's doing. I guess not.
Well, the Jeff has them.
Yes, I know.
Okay, that's good. Regarding the resolution for the reconstruction of existing sidewalks and curbs on Colerain Avenue, the resolution states in it, at the bottom, that the Board of Trustees further agrees that change orders and extra work contracts required to fulfill the construction contract shall be processed as needed. The state shall not approve a change order or extra work contract until it first gives notice in writing to the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees will contribute its share to the cost of these items in accordance with these sections. And my question is, it says that the township will deal with these, or the construction contract shall be processed as needed. And I just want to remind you that in the state audit for 18 and 19, it says, due to deficiencies in the township's internal records, certain transactions were not paid in a timely manner, and expenditures exceeding contract amounts were not approved by the township. So I just would like to make sure that you know that if you're going to have change orders or anything like that to any contract, it's supposed to be approved by the board. And I would like to see that happen.
Go ahead, Ari.
I'm not done yet, hold on. Can't get my paper apart. We signed a contract with OpenGov for permits, planning, and code enforcement. And I'd like to know what OpenGov does that the CSR cannot provide for the township. And on April the 13th, the board signed a contract with Rumpke, and everybody approved it. It was final. And then we see on a small video to talk about the upcoming meeting today, that the 10 cents is not in there, and they are going to finalize the Rumpke contract. And so I'd like to know when you passed the resolution and everybody approved it, wasn't that finalizing a contract?
Go ahead.
And that's all. I have something for Chief Denny, but I'll get with him.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Those things will be addressed. So, is there an email, the citizen's address? I got a bunch of emails.
So the board's policy is that now that we're in person, if you want to deliver public comment to the Board of Trustees at the Board of Trustees meeting, come on in and share those comments. We do get emails all the time to myself and to the board, and so your policy is, it's your meeting, but your policy has been, when we have in-person meetings, you have in-person citizen comment.
So we'll reply to this on the email, but through the email?
Well, and during my trustee report, I'm going to comment on those because I think we're still in even though we are taking only in-person comment, these two of them have contacted me, and I'll comment on those during my trustee report.
This email, you're going to,
I think we all three have copies of those, yes.
okay, you want to address that?
I'm going to address during my trustee report.
Okay, good.
The one I have not seen, but the
Yeah,
other
this
two.
one from Kathy Hunter, one from Brooke Shirley, other from Carrie Davis.
So we stay within the rules. I'm going to address two of those during my
Sure,
trustee report. So,
Okay, you got a copy of this, right?
yes, I've got my own. Thank you.
Okay, that ends the citizens' address. The next is administrative reports.
Thank you, Mr. Rajagopal. All right.
Go ahead.
We'll begin our administrative reports this evening with with Chief Walls and the Fire Department.
Are you going to address any of the citizens?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
I took plenty of notes also, Raj.
Good evening to the board. Good evening to those of you here in attendance and those watching virtually. And so for the administrative report for the fire department for April 2021 for emergency response activity, we had 718 EMS incidents, 133 fire incidents. We made 30 responses into the EMS contract area with Springfield Township. We had 2 significant building fires, one in the 10,000 block of windswept land and another one in the 8400 block of Weast Road. Our property value lost was $55,900, but value saved was $136,600. Our average response time for arrival of the first unit was 5 minutes and 24 seconds, and our first unit on the scene less than 6 minutes was 65.96%. Real quick, just to address strategic planning, as I've discussed the last couple of meetings, we're in a strategic planning process. That process is one that will bring clarity, direction, and focus. Basically, we're trying to ask or answer 4 questions. What do we want to achieve? That being our vision. What's our purpose, our mission? How do we do what we do, our values? And then how are we going to get to where we want to be? And that being our plan. So a survey went out on our Facebook page, the township Facebook page, likewise via Circle, was shared with the faith-based community and the Colerain Business Association or Chamber of Commerce, so that we could elicit feedback from our customers, both our residents and our business owners, and the faith-based groups here in the township. So if you're looking for that, once again, check the Facebook pages, and there's a survey there for our residents and our businesses. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Next, I'd like to invite Chief Mark Denny.
Chief, I want to also one note, Chief. Thank you for all our fire department, fire stations giving a vaccine for our residents.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a great thing.
Chief Denny in the Police Department.
Good evening, Board. In April, the Police Department responded to 3,515 calls for service. That's an increase of 800 calls over last April. So that's when we were first hitting COVID restrictions and restricting our responses. So we're up 800 over that period of last year. We've had about a 10% increase year to date. Response times dropped to 2 minutes and 15 seconds to emergency calls. And our officers made 80 traffic stops and 4 OVI arrests. In addition to that activity that I just talked about, it's posted on OpenGov, which you can get to, linked through our township website. We're going to start releasing some data that very few police departments make public. So as soon as we turn these on, and it should be in the next few days, you're going to be able to see information on every use of force, including the race, sex, and the type of force used. It'll also include when weapons are pointed by officers at residents or suspects as well. That'll be dated back to 17 years of data that you'll be able to look at. There'll also be pursuit data, citation, and arrest statistics, and we'll have one on internal affairs that'll show every complaint filed on a police officer and what the outcome of that complaint was, and that's dated back for 10 years. So that should be coming up here in the next few days. Today marks the 1-week anniversary of our environmental crimes investigator. In the last 5 days he's been on the street. He's conducted 38 investigations on open complaints, closed 18 of them, and has impounded 6 junk vehicles, stickered and caused another 18 to be moved. So he's being very active, and currently there are 387 open cases for him to investigate. So he's got a lot to do in front of him, but for 5 days it's a real good start. We're real proud of him, and we'll keep pushing. Every month I'm going to have the lieutenant who's in charge of that unit come in and present to you to give you an update on where we are on that effort.
Chief, I see a lot of improvements, a lot of things happening now. Our offices started the power shift now? Yeah.
Not yet. No,
Not
they'll
yet,
be
yeah.
starting that this summer.
Yeah, it's good. I see a lot of patrolling, officers doing a very intensive patrolling now. Very good.
They're very clear that it's a priority for us to be seen by the residents.
Thank you.
Chief, our environmental crimes investigator, just for clarity, is that a uniformed person or?
Yes, he's uniformed in a marked police car.
And I know we're starting more work between the police department and our code enforcement. Just so anybody knows, if somebody shows up on your property and you see them, they would have ID on them.
Yes.
That says, hey, I'm with Colerain Township. I did get a citizen complaint about somebody showing up on their property and saying they were with some arm of Colerain Township and claiming that something needed to be cleaned up. And in fact, I don't think that person was. So how would a citizen know that somebody was with Colerain Township?
Yeah, the code enforcement officers have the decal on their shirts, and they'll have ID with them as well.
Right.
And they're in a marked car, and our officer obviously is in a
Right. And I know all that. I just wanted
Yeah.
for the public to know that.
Yeah, they'll be clearly marked, and
Okay.
it'll be clear who they are.
Okay, thank you. I had no other comments.
Yeah. Chief, I always want to thank that our investigators in that last shooting, they caught the guy right on time.
They do a
You
great
know,
job.
and a
Thanks for
great job. You know, the quick response, quick investigation, brilliant job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, a happy Law Enforcement Appreciation Week to you and your officers.
Thank you very much.
I don't know the nomenclature behind this. So what is exactly a use of force that will be, what's considered a use of force?
We are very liberal in our definitions. Some departments, unfortunately, are not. Sometimes they rank any physical force used against somebody as a use of force. We open that up to be any takedown, any tackle, any time that we're using force other than restraining against like a car or a building or a wall or something like that. Anything that would go beyond that would be a use of force, and it's required to be reported and investigated.
So if a weapon is drawn, that's a separate statistic, you said, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know, I'm mouthy and I'm arguing with the police and they have to throw my arm behind my back. That's not really a use of force then?
No, not unless they would take you to the ground.
It has to be a takedown, okay.
Yes.
And each one of those is going to be identified and tracked?
Yes, and we identify the weapon and the force that was used, and the pointing of the weapons also includes pointing their OC spray or their taser or their firearm. So we try to have everything covered to make sure that.
And those will be separate?
Yes.
And I think I learned last time the service weapon, I was going to say revolver, show my age. The service weapon is on the dominant side for all officers, and the taser's on the non-dominant side, and that's policy.
We've actually placed the tasers up on the vest.
Okay, right, the new vest that we got, yeah.
You've seen, unfortunately, around the country, it's happened where they've mistakenly drawn their firearm when they meant to draw a taser. We made a point of going back over that with our officers again, and then we have them placed on the vest, so there's really no way you can mistake what weapon you're trying to access.
Okay, I appreciate it, and thank you for everything you and the folks at the police department do. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Board.
Next, I'd like to invite Mrs. Jackie O'Connell to give the Public Services Administrative Report.
Good evening. A couple things from our admin report is our stats, our year-to-date stats for park usage is up. And if you recall, last year was our record-breaking year for park usage for us, so we are even exceeding that. So as more people are coming out for baseball and group activities, those people who are walking and who discovered the parks last year are still coming back, so that's good. And our litter collections are, for the month of April, were down. That was due to rainy weather, and we still haven't been able to hire a second person. And our first litter patrol was, he was ill, and his mother also took seriously ill in April. So everybody's back to par, so May should be a better month for us. But we are still hiring for a second position in that position. The Chief touched on what Officer Boyd was doing. We, Public Services, Code Enforcement, and the officers all met together last week to talk about how we're going to coordinate efforts moving forward, and we have another meeting next week to talk about that as well. So we can make sure this is that our approach is thorough, that one isn't operating outside the other, that we are all coordinating our approach to be as thorough as we can in approaching this. I would like to, Matt Tsort brought to our attention today that the Ohio Department of Aging featured us twice on their Facebook page in the past couple of weeks. They featured, Tawana Moulter had written an article about Faces of Courage or Faces of Strength. They featured that article that was in Circle, so you saw that in Circle if you subscribed, and they also did a separate piece on Bud Rader, our bus driver. So thanks to Matt for pointing that out, because we didn't see that. We're getting closer to the Fort Colerain opening. We had a flag contest that ended last week. We selected a winner, so we'll hopefully bring them up at next month's meeting or the next meeting we have. So you can meet the child who is designing the flag that will fly over Fort Colerain. We had about 24 applicants for that, so lots of good artwork from the community. Regarding Mr. McVeigh touched on the chicanes, and as Mr. Mills talked about, those are in the parking lot per se for right now because of cost, but we are working with the police and fire departments on the widest part of Laura Linda to allow parking on both sides, because we think that will slow traffic down. That will be a natural traffic calmer. So we are working on doing that in the next month or two, and then doing some measuring behind that so that we know. And that's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you. I want to mention thanks for this. You all do the coordination effort to control police department, public works, code enforcement, coming together. Something is happening now. That's great work. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Jackie. Mrs. O'Connell. As for my administrative report, I can go through some of the citizen comments and respond to things that I know about. Mr. McVeigh has mentioned that looking into to becoming a city is in the strategic plan. That is found nowhere in the strategic plan because we are not looking into being a city. The Wi-Fi issues should be addressed this evening by Mr. Weckbach. But the answer to your question, do you have to go out to bid? It's a sole source procurement process. So our procurement process was in keeping with the Community Development Block Grant procurement policies and the township's procurement policies, so there's no issue with procurement on this. Do we have to pay for it on an ongoing basis? Yes, we do. Could we use CARES Act funding to pay for some of this? Yes, and we intend, there's a grant application that's on the street right now to apply for such funds, and we intend to apply for them. Let's see, Mr. Miller, there didn't seem to be any questions there. Ms. Moore, park vandalism, do we have cameras in the park? I believe that we had one camera that was set to take a picture a day, and we were going to do like a time lapse. Is that right, Jackie?
We did have a time lapse. I told Mrs. Moore I would answer.
Oh, okay. Very good. Okay, thanks. The intern, what is he doing? A lot. He's going to be producing the second season of the podcast, Hey Colerain, which I'm really looking forward to. He also has a number of projects where he's working with Mr. Weckbach on projects. So let's see, ODOT sidewalks. There didn't seem to be a question there. OpenGov, what do they do that CSR does not? Lots, and we're really excited to roll that out. So from the customer side, it'll feel very similar. So you'll be able to ask for a service like, hey, there's tall weeds and grass at 4200 Springdale. So from your side, it shouldn't feel much different, but on the back end, it's going to be a lot different and better for our code enforcement folks, and in that it'll provide scheduling. It'll provide. It'll help us keep track of the distance between the first inspection and second inspection, and manage the case flow in a way that we'll be able to get more done faster. So do more with less is the goal here. And the other really important thing is it allows for lots of in the field work to be done rather than that hybrid of out in the field, come back, print things off, mail them, that kind of thing. So hopefully we'll be able to get to more of your service requests faster. That's the goal. And
Will that be a different system?
yeah, so the goal is to migrate from CSR to OpenGov for all service requests eventually, but first it'll be for the planning and zoning and code enforcement in particular. The Rumpke contract, so the Board of Trustees authorized me to sign a contract, and so I did. I signed a contract, and we see the final contract in the agenda tonight in the consent agenda. So I think that covers all of the citizen comments. I had two things that I wanted to share with the board this evening and residents. The first is folks may have heard that townships in Ohio were not going to receive any federal funds through the American Rescue Plan Act. And that was very disappointing to us, and we had been working through the Ohio Township Association, and they were working with our congressional delegations. I know that individual board members have done an awful lot to convey to elected representatives at the federal level how important this money would be to Colerain Township. I found out yesterday at about 3:10 in the afternoon that Colerain Township is one of 3 townships in Ohio that is guaranteed to get federal funds. In fact, we'll be getting federal funds directly from the federal government, and we'll be getting $7.5 million. So that is spectacular from my perspective. Now, the hard part now is understanding what we can use that money for, and that's not clear 100%. I have a stack of paper that's about this thick it's the interim final rule, and so I don't know, that sounds like it's subject to change, and it's very thick, but we're going to be working through that in the FAQs, and we're going to try to understand what it is exactly that we can use that money for, and of course we'll have a lively discussion about that here. But I just wanted to share that great news for the township. And secondly, I wanted to take a minute, find my piece of paper. So we have 50 or so employees in Colerain Township, and folks come to work, and they go home from work, and they do an awful lot in the time in between that changes people's lives. And you know, a lot of times when you talk to a firefighter or a police officer, they have this sort of, well, it was just all in a day's work, you know? Yeah, sure, I saved somebody's life today, but that's just what I do, and they think that that's normal. It's heroic. And in fact, just recently, I was made aware of a situation where a wife had emailed and said how much she appreciated the fact that our police and firefighters saved her husband's life. And she said, I need to thank these men for giving him a second chance at life and let them know that our family is eternally grateful for all that they did for us. And it's messages like me that remind me that, you know, we don't come to work to make widgets here. We come to work to improve people's lives. And the police and firefighter do that in dramatic fashion. But all of our employees work very hard to make people's lives better. And I love receiving messages like this. So I wanted to take a second to share that with you. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. I had a couple questions. Yes. Okay. Some might be for Mr. Solomon there. So I had brought up to you, I think, when we talk, Mr. Mills and I talk, he and I, weekly on some of the issues about the cricket and when I did some research on cricket, I thought it was like baseball, but this thing is really hard and it whips around, and there's been a number of deaths. I was concerned about any kind of any kind of legal issues or things that would come with the cricket. The thing goes at like 120 miles an hour, and it's not like a baseball. Evidently, it's harder. I don't know.
Matt, can I answer?
Yeah, sure.
I played in India.
Well, you're very athletic, though.
I play cricket, and it's one of the world famous game. You know, it's a very competitive game. The ball is heavier, a little bit heavier than a softball. I mean, a baseball. The speed also goes to 100 miles an hour like that. But the getting hit and people dead is they hit the 3 wicket, they call them. You know, 3 wicket they hit and point. It's a very safe game. I think a lot of there are many residents in Colerain. They were very excited. I don't think it's very dangerous as much as football. You know, that's pretty dangerous too. You know, people can any sports. You know, if you play carefully, it's a pretty safe game.
Just making sure that we're covered legally.
Sure.
The second, donation boxes. So I did a deeper dive this past week on this and was shocked that the number of cities, townships, whatever, that have been sued for moving these things, to the point where even if you suggest that it needs to be manned, that's a violation of free speech. And is that your kind of take from that as well?
I know John Dieter's looked into that for our firm, but he communicated that it's a lot more complicated than it initially appears. There's a lot of First Amendment rights that are attached to it, and it's not as easy as just, hey, moving it off a property.
The two options that, and again, this is from a non-legal background, but the two options that I see that are workable are, number one, you can't ban donation bins, but you can ban bins. Now, what that means, I don't know. What does that mean for trash bins? The second thing that you can do is the license program, hold people accountable and have have a contact with each one, and I think that's where we've been headed for that. But I was shocked that there were actually a number of municipalities that would get the legal advice to not proceed with a ban on donation bids, and then would end up in court almost immediately. It's become a pretty ubiquitous issue in the United States right now. I was shocked that it was. I mean, it's not just Colerain. So we are trying. I just don't want us to end up in court with it. I mean, I could do a motion now to ban all the donation bids, and I think we'll be in court by the end of the week. And I think Mr. Solomon's busy enough with some of our court cases. But that's that's part of what I said. Part of what I've found. On the litter, we had talked to Mr. Mills about kind of a full court press on adding, we've got a pretty good stick now, some carrots, as in even PR and, don't trash Colerain, something like that. I think maybe now that we have just an amazing officer. Officer Boyd, 38 investigated cases closed already, that we kind of maybe ratcheted up a little bit. And I don't know if that's something that we talk about in a future meeting.
Well, stand by because there are some really amazing things happening right now with that. So we have a group of, the Colerain Township Chamber of Commerce has a group of 15 to 20 people that are meeting regularly now that are developing a Team Up to Green Up program for the business community. And what that evolves into is unclear, but we know that it involves getting the business community's buy-in to keeping Colerain Township looking great. And it really is incredible to see the amount of energy that's behind that initiative. That's on the business side. And then on the resident side, Ms. O'Connell is spearheading a sister program for residents to do things like adopt a block. And that idea actually came from Northbrook residents saying, hey, we would really like to set up an adopt a block program, and Jackie's taking the lead on helping to make that happen. And so what we see happening is alignment of our sort of civic organizations, our business community, with the goals that the trustees have set. And I think that is extraordinary and exciting. So there's stuff coming on that.
I appreciate that. I also appreciate the new Rumpke contract we mentioned. As you recall, the 27th, I'm looking at the meeting minutes. I told Mr. Weckback that I had a fundamental problem with that 10 cents, and that he said that we would look into it further, and I'm happy that 10 cents has been removed. On the American Rescue Plan Act, this is a once-in-a-generation thing that we're facing here with $7.5 million, and I'm very excited about it. I don't know how the federal government's going to pay for it all, but I feel that I'm obligated to accept it for Colerain. But I think it's an opportunity to really start to bring our infrastructure up to speed. But what I don't want to do, I want to take care of kind of our needs first as opposed to our wants. I don't want to add additional infrastructure in large amounts that's going to add more monthly expenses. So I think it's an opportunity on that, what they use in government, that phrase of deferred maintenance, to kind of address that. And I'm very excited about that. And it really is generational. And I'm excited about having an open conversation once we figure out what can be used. And my last question for you is, and I probably should ask one of the chiefs this, but the resident had asked me, was coming back from Muncie, actually, Indiana, and between Ross and Colerain on Sunday, was there some kind of incident at the river, or? There was a water rescue incident. It was just a stalled vehicle in the river. Okay. Thank you. But yeah, I look forward to seeing the new stuff on the litter and working through our American Rescue Plan Act. So thank you.
And those the chamber intends to kick that whole thing off. The whole campaign off at their Hometown Hero event, which is coming up in June. And they're going to be honoring a number of folks from our community. And the featured guest is Rob Balot, who is the subject of, I think it's called Darker Waters or Deeper Waters. He was a local attorney who did some work on clean and green initiatives of his own.
There was a movie made about him, I think, at one point.
That's right.
I'm sorry, just occurred to me one other question, I think from Mr. Solomon. For some reason now, maybe it happens in year 2 of being a trustee, I am getting peppered by emails from vendors. If it comes from a citizen, I'm going to read it, I'm not going to block it, but I'm tired of getting these vendors selling me. Am I okay to block those and take those off, or do I just delete them and move on?
I think this is probably something we should talk about. I need to know more facts.
Okay. I'll get some information together for you. Okay. Thanks.
Jeff, I wonder, that's a great news, getting that $7.5 million on Colerain Township, one of the 3. I think that what federal government see, there's a growth expectation in Colerain Township, economic development in Colerain Township. These are the factors they evaluate. Definitely is going to bring a prosperity to our township and use that money wisely to build our economy here and the neighborhoods, build a good, strong neighborhoods. Thank you for your work. Okay, next in the agenda is the trustees report. Want to go first?
Sure. Okay, so we did get a few emails, and our policy, and I just thought about, should we just read these during the public citizens address? And I will just go ahead and address these emails, and one of them is from Kerry Davis, and Kerry had called me last Friday, and we spoke for quite a while. It was mostly Kerry relating her ideas to me, and she asked me to answer a few questions, and I see that she has put them in something that she would have had read at the citizens address. And some of the items she's talking about is she's concerned that Rumpke's seeking another expansion to the landfill. I don't know anything about that, and that's, as far as I know, not true. Requested a waiver for some various things. That's all in the hands of the Ohio EPA now, and I believe that's in the state. That's nothing the township has control over. This is all Ohio EPA things, so that's who these questions should be directed to. That the contract, our current contract that we just have on the agenda tonight has substantially changed from what was put out to bid. We authorized back on, I think it was January 11th, we authorized our administrator to find a third party to take care of the bids. That way, it was an independent third person and it wasn't us or one of the trustees. And then after that, we authorized our administrator to enter into a contract with them. And I appreciate Rich McVeigh for coming back out to this meeting. It was sort of frustrating last week with some of the comments because I knew that we were still negotiating out some of the final things. And one thing you don't do in business is start talking in the middle of a negotiation. The 10-cent fee, I believe this was something we went in on a bid with Colerain and Springfield Township, and you might know, Jeff Mills, if Springfield Township kept that 10-cent fee in their billing process, and that's something we are not paying. I believe Rumpke negotiated, as it said in the scope of work, Rumpke negotiated to pay the fees to the third-party person, and I believe it was $20,000, and that's something Rumpke is paying to to the people that went out to get the bids, and frankly, what's gone on with Springfield Township is not our business. So, and there was a lot of comments there, and that said, sometimes when folks come up to the microphone or email us, you have to keep in mind, you say, well, you trustees don't know what you're doing. Well, the fact is, the three of us don't talk to each other outside of meetings, so a lot of times, this is the first time, we're talking about any of these things, and of course it's going to seem that way, because the fact is, we don't talk to each other outside of meetings. And I'll go on to some of the other things that came up. Carrie asked me specifically why we are paying our monthly, which is quarterly, for a Colerain Township residential customer. I believe my bill at my home is $51.90 a quarter. I talked to somebody in Green Township, theirs is $60.36, so I'm $8 or $9 lower than Green, but she wanted to know why Harrison is lower than us. And I gave a couple reasons, and one was the houses are closest together. When you're driving out so many of our county roads in Colerain Township, you stop the truck, you get out, you tip the trash, you get in the truck, you move it another 150 feet. And so it's a whole different collection process than being in the city of Harrison proper. And one of the other things, when I get my quarterly bill, somebody at Rumpke put that bill together, they put it in an envelope and mailed it. And you got to figure that's $1 or $2 to bill a customer, and times how many customers we have. And I think the city of Harrison, do they pay for that with one big, could you comment on that, how that works?
Sure, yeah, the city of Harrison pays for all of their residents out of one of their funds. And so the Harrison residents still pay for their solid waste, but it's in the form of a different kind of tax. And the city of Harrison pays in one lump sum to Rumpke, is my understanding.
And Rumpke's billing however many residential accounts there are here.
To one bill.
Right, and I get a bill, and you got to figure that by the time they put postage on it, it's $1 or $2. And so if mine's $2 more a quarter, that would be a very direct reason, because they're billing me directly.
That's right.
There's some other things in Carrie's email where she asked us to take on some of the things that are going on in Whitewater Township, and that's not us, and that's for the folks out in Whitewater to deal with. But Carrie, you asked me those questions, so I have dealt with your email. There's another email from somebody named Brooke Shirley, and it appears to be a personnel issue for one of our code enforcement officers. So I would ask that Jeff Mills addresses that to Brooke Shirley. And then I've got an email from Kathy Hunter, which she asked me to read during the meeting tonight, and I will go ahead and address it. She, at our last meeting, I had received some information during the meeting about a coffee table that had been left outside of a Matthew 25 box in the parking lot of White Oak Christian Church. And then there was a question about some tires that were abandoned on Blue Rock Road, and a question about a refrigerator that was abandoned behind a commercial property on Blue Rock Road, kind of across from the United Dairy Farmers at Banning and Blue Rock. The coffee table and the tires were gone within 12 hours. I drove past that commercial business on my way to this meeting, and that refrigerator is gone. And there's something about, Mr. Unger doesn't get stuff done. Well, no, I do and I don't. Sometimes it takes a little longer. It's easier for us to pick up. Well, actually, I called somebody from Matthew 25 and asked him about the coffee table, and he told me their process is it's actually whoever's property. I guess White Oak Christian Church authorized Matthew 25 to have a box there, so it's really up to White Oak Christian Church to handle that issue. It's easier to pick up tires off the side of the road and have the church get rid of a coffee table than it is to get rid of a refrigerator. And I look at it as the commercial business owner. He's a victim of a crime. Somebody dumped a refrigerator on his property, and you have to have the refrigerant gas taken out of a refrigerator, and it's just more of a process. But I drove past there today, and the refrigerator's gone. So yes, all those things that I was asked about at the last meeting were taken care of. And then there's one other comment in Mrs. Hunter's email about she would like Rumpke to participate in getting rid of some of these clothing collection boxes, mainly the overflow on those. And once again, those are on private property. And based on what Mr. Wallard has said, that's an issue that we're not done dealing with yet, but I think we need to walk very carefully. So that would be the 3 emails that we received. And I would comment on, I took some other notes. Yes, we don't talk to each other. I did not know Queen City Metro was coming here tonight until they walked in the door. I don't know if one of you two invited them or how they ended up here, but I was fine to hear their presentation since they took the time to come out. Environmental crimes investigator, that's great. We are working on the trash and litter problems here, and I don't want anybody to think that we're not. The sidewalks on Joseph, the right-of-way on Joseph is only so wide, and frankly, it's my understanding that we would need a construction easement, meaning we would need to go through a process to take private property because we're at the limits of the right-of-way. There's probably enough room for a sidewalk, and there might be an inch or two beyond that, but frankly, we're going to have equipment over on private property to do that. We had funding for that, and I was on a group 6 years ago over at Colerain High School where they brought in one of the engineers from Hamilton County to talk about it, and the Homeowners Association just refuses to give us a construction easement. If that ever changes, I'd certainly reconsider sidewalks there, but the fact of the matter is we would have to go through an eminent domain process at this point to take that land. It's not like there's right-of-way there that's usable. I mean, we would need to go beyond that. So, did you have a comment?
Two other things on the Joseph Road sidewalk that were impediments. If I remember correctly, and it's been years, but there would be a need to regrade part of their property, and there would be the elimination of some trees. Now, we also proposed different trees, like we would add trees, but they felt like the additional small trees don't equal, the existing mature trees, and those were other reasons given why they didn't support the project.
And my last comment to address Mr. Miller's concerns about building another firehouse, and if we get to that point, I think there's some lack of I don't think we're all agreeing on the same thing, but the 3 trustees, whoever that is, will eventually decide where a firehouse is going to be constructed at. I kind of think the Dunlap one is, I've been up there, there's 6 inches clearance to get a fire truck in there. It's a very old building, but we'll work all that out. We do have an option on a piece of land up off Struble Road that I believe we need to exercise by 2026 or 27.
Correct.
And based on where all of our calls for service come from, and it's not on Rumpke's property, it's on property that we have an option of based off of what was built on Generation Drive, am I correct?
That's correct.
And we'll either elect to use that property or go out and buy some real estate somewhere, but that property does exist, and if that helps to serve people that need fire service out on Struble Road and in the northern areas of the township, then maybe that's the right spot. That's another discussion for another day. Rumpke, I've spoken to them, and they are going to restart their tours as soon as COVID possible, and they have their own internal fire department, and they have trucks full of water, and they're not waiting on us to respond. They have all their own safety department, and they handle a lot of those issues internally. Obviously, if they needed an ambulance, we would respond to them just like any other business, but we're not building a fire department to serve Rumpke. They handle any fire or combustible items they handle on their own. And if they would ever have something bigger than that, it's going to be more than one fire department, but they're pretty good about maintaining their own safety department. So, and then the park vandalism, we would need Wi-Fi to get the latest and greatest cameras. I've done a little research. There exists an infrared camera that I've seen demonstrated, and it's not on the market yet, and there's no lights with it. It's completely dark. I've seen the images. It puts a very 3D color image of what's out there in the middle of the night, and it's fascinating technology, and I am working to get one donated to the township, which these other two guys don't know that yet, but you could hang it anywhere in the darkest of night in a rainstorm, and it would give you a color image of who or what was there. And it's just something that's not on the market yet. It's a pretty military-grade camera, but I think I've got a good line on getting one donated. So that's all I have, Raj.
Great. I think talking about camera, did we, Jeff, we talked about that, installing a new type of camera when the Heritage Park was vandalized?
Yes, and we have cameras at Heritage that helped us solve the crime that was committed where a young man with his truck did donuts and tore up all the. We were able to use cameras to solve that vandalism.
Like I said, we may pursue with what Dan mentioned about that night vision cameras, and I want these criminals. They're not going to mess up with our parks. We're going to catch them.
Well, they're reactive is the problem.
Right.
Yes, you're catching somebody vandalizing your stuff, but this thing has such a clear color image. It is amazing, and I can't wait to get my hands on one. So,
thank you, Dan. Thank you for your report. Matt, you want to go?
Sure. Just a couple of things. I think I handled most of what I had with Mr. Mills. So congrats to all those getting ready to graduate, and keep in mind that we'll have it'll be summer, and we'll have kids out on the roads again and parks and stuff, and that'll be great. And it was great to hear that there are more kids moving into Niagara. I want to bring up a couple of items that was organized for Chris Green to raise funds for a couple of things. At McDogg's Saloon on May 15th for Armed Forces Day, 5 o'clock, they have a flag retirement. So if you have a flag that's tattered, you can watch it be retired the official way. I've always found it kind of an emotional thing. Earlier that day, there's a fallen soldier ride. Kickstands up at noon. You ride to the ceremony to Green and return to McDogg's for the flag ceremony. And those are both May 15th. On June 12th is the annual charity golf outing. And the other thing that Chris Green has done through his organization, and I know that a lot of people, this is near and dear to their hearts. When Mr. Taberka passed away, he's selling to raise money for the family a star and a coin, an American star from the flag that was last flown outside of his house, with a saying on the back that says, "I am the star from our American flag. This flag is flown in my front yard of my house, at the time of my passing. My flag is now tattered and torn. I ask you to wear this star with honor and remember me, a veteran that is no longer here. And kind of the challenge coin has a thing on the back. I carry a coin in my pocket, a simple reminder to me of the fact that freedom is not free. The price of freedom is written on the wall. It's also a daily reminder of a peace and comfort we share thanks to a veteran who was willing to dare. This soldier stood up for our country without hesitation or regret, so I carry a coin in my pocket so I will never forget. And I know that, that the family is in need of the funds for some of the stuff that towards the end of life. Also, sidewalks on Joseph. I obviously wasn't here when that happened, but I remember reading through the minutes, and it was a pretty contentious fight. It was pretty ugly, and I get it. I think we have to figure out some kind of resolution for that. The other thing that I kind of noticed, and if you notice, we have a list of trustee meeting rules, which I wrote most of, and we had several meetings to hash them out. And the one thing that was always kind of I couldn't align in my head is the public comment, the citizens' response. And if you go and you look at, usually most townships don't have meeting rules, but cities and municipalities do. Most of them have a process where you're on a timer clock and you go the questions, and then it goes to the administrators to answer. I'm not an idiot. I sense that people are frustrated with that process. The other side of the coin, and I thought a lot about this when I wrote this, is if you answer it question by question, oftentimes, not that any of us would do this, you have somebody kind of waste away the time of the person on the clock, and they can't get to the other questions. I've been told by Mr. Unger several times that I can be kind of wordy, and I don't want an incident to come where people ask questions and I kind of spend their time away. The other thing is that from everything I studied when I put these together is it becomes very adversarial with its question response. I don't want it to be an argument. I don't know if that's the best way to do it the way we do it. I don't know that the other way is the best way to do it, but my intent is for it to be respectful to all parties involved. And my intent is so that the questions get answered, and my intent is so that others less noble than us don't spend away your time kind of talking around questions and be like, well, I see your time is up. Next, please. For what it's worth, that's the thought process that went behind that, and I get the frustration from everybody that appears before here. Why can't you just answer it now? And oftentimes it needs to go to a chief or a division head. But I just wanted to provide that explanation, and I'm the one that wrote them, and that's why I wrote them, and that's why I put that particular method in. Whether it's good or bad, certainly, as Mr. Mills says, sometimes rational people can disagree over issues like that. Other than that, I am excited to see a kickoff here soon to the summer, and I was happy to see a concert series down at Riverbend, and hopefully, we've got the fireworks coming up, and we can exit out of COVID hopefully soon and get back to a little bit of normal. And with that, I'll end my report. Thank you.
Thank you for the report, Mr. Matt Wallet. I'll give a very brief report. I was really proud of our fire department. Each station give a vaccination for our residents. Now they're coming very close. Either shortage of the vaccines. They contacted the health department, and they were going to provide a mobile unit to give vaccines for our residents. I talked with the coordinator, John. Is willing to help us in the week of May 23rd, that week. First, we talked about the first place will be heavily populated area. Also, a lot of people don't have access to go and get the vaccine. Maybe Northbrook area. We're thinking about the family general stores, that parking lot. We may talk to the owner of the stores. We're thinking about from 3 to 9 o'clock that Northbrook area, the residents can come, the more access to come to get their vaccines. My intent is almost everyone in our township will have a vaccines. Folks, that coronavirus is a deadly thing. We don't want to take a chance. Everyone should receive vaccines, and we make accessible for our residents to get the vaccines. So we are a wonderful health department, also the fire department, very coordinating. Then second one, we also want to go to the like a Groesbeck area. We are thinking about St. Anne's, maybe the Sunday, 23rd Sunday, 3 to 6 o'clock, 3 to 6 o'clock. And then we're going to talk with our administrators and the fire department. Where else? We're also thinking about the Walmart near Rumpke. There's a lot of comes. One thing we know, Colerain Township consists of a lot of diversity. People from. There's a lot of Nepali residents who live around the Groesbeck, Galbraith, around the area. They don't have access to transportation. We'll find some way they can come and receive their vaccines. Because around the area there's a lot of Nepali stores there, they can tell that people coming to buy the produce, we'll make announcement. Also, a lot of Hispanic community lives in our Colerain Township. They all live pretty much in the north side of Colerain Township. We found Walmart will be ideal place in the parking lot. Could be the mobile unit stop by. So that 23rd of May during the week, we can work with the health department to provide vaccines for our residents. It won't no cost, no money. They won't ask you any ID, no insurance card. They just come and get the vaccines. That's our goal, that all the residents in our community have received the vaccines. So that's a project I'm proudly announce it, and we'll work with the administration how we're going to structure the schedules and places. That's my report. The next on the agenda is a new business.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We'll begin new business in the public safety departments, and I'd like to invite Chief Denny to present items.
Hello again, Board. First item is recommend a motion or adoption of a motion to dispose of excess and unneeded equipment. These are 4 police mountain bikes. They're at least 15 years old each, and they're not serviceable any longer. And the value is less than $50 for each bike. There's 3 Trek bikes and 1 Gary Fisher bike, and the serial numbers are in the agenda packet.
We have a motion to dispose of surplus property.
I'll second.
Any discussions?
What do you end up doing with scrap metal?
With these, we may be able to, we're still
Scrap
working on it,
metal.
we may be able to get these to a bike vendor who would then give us credit for our next bikes.
Oh, okay, so that's
For equipment for them.
great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll
Good-
definitely
good
try to get
answer.
something
Thank you.
out of it.
no other questions.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Next item is recommend adoption of a motion to purchase shields, ballistic shields for our officers. These will protect the officers from high-power ammunition, and they provide ballistic protection for their whole body during close contact with armed suspects. The request is for 1 2x4 shield and 4 2x3 shields. If you recall, in November of 2020, we had an officer-involved shooting. The suspect was shot. He was in his car, and the officers needed about a half an hour before they were able to get another department to respond with a shield so we could get him medical care. So when I started my career 30 years ago, I wouldn't think I'd ever be up here asking for protection for high rifle ammunition, but that's where we are nowadays, unfortunately. This allows the officers to approach an armed suspect and still have protection from the firearms. So these will be kept in the beat cars, and then we'll have one larger shield that'll be kept here at the police department if we have something that requires something a little bigger than that. But again, this is something we had to wait for another agency to respond, so the suspect stayed in the car. Our officers were kind of held at bay for probably 20, 30 minutes before we could get the proper equipment to get him out of there. The cost of these shields is $19,175.75 total, and we were able to get 45% off of that, the MSRP on those by going to a couple different vendors and shopping around a little bit.
Motion to purchase protective shields.
I'll second it.
Any discussions?
Yeah, so just to satisfy my curiosity, who responded with the,
Springfield Township responded.
okay, so they have them?
Yes.
Around here, does North College Hill have?
I don't believe anybody else does in the smaller agencies.
Okay.
Like I said, the cost is kind of prohibitive for
Right.
it. Unfortunately, we'd love to get these for every marked cruiser, but at the price, it's just not something we can do right now.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, that's a great investment for our police officers, and nowadays, you see that a lot of police being shot and killed.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, that's sad. And it is good move, Chief, protect our officers.
And in that particular case, it would allow us to, I believe that you're talking about Cheviot and Galbraith down there in the parking lot?
Yes.
It would have allowed us to get to the suspect sooner so that he didn't die on us.
Right. Yeah,
Because if he dies on us, then it's a whole nother,
it would have benefited him greatly to have us there quicker.
right.
Thank you, Chief. Any further discussion?
None from me.
Roll call, please, Mr. Baker.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Thank you for that. Last item is recommend adoption of a motion for a noise permit for St. John's Athletic Boosters. They're having a spring celebration on May 28th from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m.
I'll motion to approve a noise permit for St. John's Athletic Boosters.
I'll second it.
Any discussions?
Not from me.
Roll call, Mr. Baker.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, the next item on the agenda in new business is a planning and zoning item. I'll go ahead and take that. This item is the biweekly resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement. Recommendation is to adopt the resolution. So this resolution allows for the removal of uncontrolled vegetation and/or trash at the following properties: 9491 Burgess, 9929 Capstan, 8300 Colerain, 2966 Cranbrook, 6662 Daleview, 9970 Hollis, 4519 Pool, 3835 Springdale. Recommendation is to adopt.
I would motion that we approve the resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement of the properties that are listed
I second it.
agenda.
Oh, go ahead. All right, we got a motion, we got a second. Any discussions?
Not from me.
It's good, it's actually pursuing these people in violations.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good news. Thank you. Roll call, Mr. Baker.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Thank you, Board. The next 5 items are in administration. I'd like to invite Mr. Weckbach up to present the first 3.
Good evening, Board. The first item I have for you is a motion authorizing the Township Administrator to execute an agreement with Immersion Design for a facility master plan. I'd like to start off by mentioning that Mr. Durger and Mr. Wiley are with Immersion. They're here in the audience tonight, so if we do have specific or technical questions, they may be able to assist in answering those. But as you recall, at the last board meeting, we introduced this item for a first reading for all of you. There were a few questions that came up. I attempted to answer those questions as best as we could in the memorandum that is associated with this. A couple of things that are really going to be high-level items to consider with this is that it's going to create a prioritization process for the township. So as we see all of these different facility needs, capital needs, long-term guts of our buildings that we know are going to have to be replaced. This project is going to help us to develop that actionable document that's going to tell us how we do things, when we do things, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to provide recommendations that are going to hopefully make it more efficient in our buildings, so resulting in some cost savings for us in terms of the long-term and the short-term. And then also just develop what would essentially be the long-term strategic plan for our capital and infrastructure projects throughout our township facilities. So this is really going to set the stage and be a vision that we can execute on for the next 10, 20, 30 years. So with that, I will recommend adoption of the motion.
I will motion to authorize Township Administrator to execute an agreement with Immersion Design for a facility master plan in order to bring it to the floor.
I will second it.
Right. Discussion?
Yes. So, you want me to start?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I've taken a look at this. I've taken a look at a couple of the samples that you've sent, I think we're a little bit early with this document. I think we already have we already have a list of knowns, things that we need to address first, and I feel a little bit of like putting the cart before the horse, knowing that we need A, B, and C, and we're putting a report together for when we're going to do D, E, F, and G. I think that I think a lot's changed with the phone call Mr. Mills got 3 o'clock on Monday with $7.5 million in federal aid, and that this, that we have a larger picture to look at. I think that the economy's still in flux, and a lot of things may change. And I think that Mr. McVeigh made the point last meeting that oftentimes this becomes a wish list, and I think that's the natural evolution of bureaucracies, is that bureaucracies try to improve. Not that they're trying to spend more money or anything, they're trying to get the best they can so that they can best serve the people. So it's going to become, I think, a wish list of things that people want instead of needs. And the other thing I'm concerned with is that it will add more infrastructure that will add additional monthly servicing fees and payments and things like that. That'll increase our overall budget on a long-term basis. For those reasons, I'm not ready to support this now. I think we're a little bit early with it, but I'm one vote, one opinion, and certainly there are two others.
And I'll go ahead and speak. I think that, as we discussed just before, with where we would replace a firehouse, because I don't think we're doing two of them at once. Sometimes, trustees come and go, and there's different political pressures to do certain things. I would just as soon have a third independent party look at such a thing, and the cost of it is the cost of maybe an employee and a half salary, but it's all being done with engineers and people with architect stamps and that, and so we would be able to take any of these things they suggested, and then, as you've done such a good job with, go out and find a grant. Hey, we have a plan, and it's not approved by a trustee running for office. It's approved by an architect or an engineer, and it's solid. And and as was said earlier, this money we might get is a once in a generation type thing, and I would just as soon have a professional person that's more qualified than myself at least detail what some of these things are. And we talked about the Colerain Avenue plan we did last year with KZF, and there was a lot of consternation about approving that, which we ultimately did. But you've used certain facets of that plan to go out and get millions of dollars in grants and funding, stuff that we can't get if Dan says we need it, but we can get if we have licensed architect or engineer coming up with a plan. And we're doing this once. I'm of the impression that you interviewed several firms to do this.
Yes, I believe we had 3 firms. Yes.
And they're probably doing these type projects in in cities and villages and municipalities and counties all over the place, and they probably, hey, if you do this, I know where to go get money for it, so we can avoid paying for stuff out of local taxes. And right, I don't want it to become a wish list of things, but I think it's important to have an outside third party do things such as this. So that's my words on it.
Thanks, Dan. Like every meeting I say that, I'm a strong believer of a strategic goal. You got to set up strategic goals and plans. We cannot take it granted, oh, let's do it next year or when the economy gets better, or no. But we got like some guide, some plans we set aside. Like I said, every meeting I say, I'm a big student of evidence-based programs. We studied in that master's degree, that's evidence-based. You gotta have a program. This gives you a scale, your plan, your goal, you set aside, all right, it may happen, but we follow through it. And we set aside money. I think this plan comes from the 2021 strategic goals, plan, beautifications, and economic developments. So what we're doing this year, we go along with the 2021 strategic goals that, I usually carry that book, strategic planning, right? Yes. So we go along the strategic plan. It's good to have a strategic plan goals for the future. It may not happen now, but these guys, like Dane mentioned about, engineers specialize in that field, they develop a plan, which will thereby improve the image of the Colerain Township, which eventually lead us to get more grants. Hey, this guy's got a plans. If you don't got no plans, no guides, same thing happened. I know I didn't vote for that when they spent the money for the Colerain corridor plan, but the plan when I took the plan to the U.S. congressman and the state ODOT department. Hey, this is a guide. We need to expand the corridor plan because it's going to lead us to the economic development for the future. Maybe happen sometimes. Now Congress passed the multi-billion dollars in the infrastructure plan, and Congressman Steve Chabot is working hard for that to get us a money grant for that. So in a short way, I say, I think this is a plan we're going to make for the future.
And I'll go ahead and ask the question. I think this was around 118, and you had budgeted 150,000 for it, and that would be our total obligation. And once we had this, we're not compelled to use that firm for any projects we might pull out of it. It's just
correct. We could use someone else if we wanted to at the end of the day, or we could wind up using them if we really like the work that they do.
Yeah, and just because we all have differences on what we think the priorities are, and I think the priority is the Dunlap Firehouse, and these guys might think differently, and you might think something else, but that way you've got an independent, outside, third person saying, here's the pluses and minuses of anything you want to do. And we do have quite a bit of real estate and buildings in that, and I think it's a reasonable amount to have professional guidance on. And, I know a lot, and so do these other guys, but I would rather have a professional person. I don't do my own doctoring or dental work either. I would rather have a professional do it. So that's where I'm at on it.
Any further discussions?
Nope.
Okay, we got more. Mr. Baker, roll call, please.
Mr. Unger.
Aye.
Mr. Rajgopal.
Aye.
Mr. Wallert.
No.
Thank you, Board. The next item on the agenda is a motion authorizing the Township Administrator to execute an agreement with Cincinnati Bell for public Wi-Fi in township parks. So every 3 years, we're awarded dollars through the Community Development Block Grant that can be used for various improvements throughout our community. Back in the 2018 to 2020 cycle, which just wrapped up, we actually came in under our community development spend compared to what our budgeted amount was. I believe our budgeted amount was about $300,000. We came in closer to $220,000. After reviewing what potential projects were on the table, the availability to turn some of these projects around, because there are timetables to make sure that we spend these dollars before the feds take them back, we recognized that there was a unique opportunity to provide a new amenity to some of our residents in the form of public Wi-Fi in our parks. So listed in this document are the 4 parks that actually would qualify under Community Development Block Grant to receive this public Wi-Fi. The total cost of this project is, I believe, $67,000 and change, and I would recommend adoption of the motion.
A motion to issue authorize Township Administrator to execute an agreement with Cincinnati Bell for public Wi-Fi in township parks.
I second it. Any discussions?
Sure, and the entire agreement is found, it's a 35-page document that's found in the agenda for anyone that did not get to see it. And just to be clear, this is funded with a grant, and this is not, granted, it's all money that comes from the taxpayer somewhere, but this is not out of our local property tax revenues. This is a grant that was applied for with this intent, and that's how it came to be.
That is correct. These are federal dollars.
Okay. They sure seem to have a lot of federal dollars out there floating around. But I think it'll be a good thing, and it will allow us to get some very modern security cameras in our parks. You know, this isn't the days when you had to string wire to put cameras up, and if we have quality, high-grade Wi-Fi, that'll help with our security, so I think it'll help us out in the long run. So no other comments from me.
So I guess I'm the Debbie Downer here tonight. With this, I have some of the same questions. You know, do we need this now? Is this really a need or is it a want? What's the long-term cost? How many people are we actually serving? You know, what's the cost per consumer? How many people in these areas really don't have access to the internet? And if we couch it around, you know, the pandemic and the fact that there were a number of, I don't know what that number is, of students that may have struggled for internet access during remote learning. Certainly we're getting ready to enter summer, and that's not going to be a question then. I just feel that these, you know, there's a CDBG, I pulled up United States Code Title 42 on CDBG and what it can be spent on. I just, at this point, I really don't support this because I don't feel that we have, I don't feel that I have enough information to see how many people it's actually going to help, A, and B, I don't really see it as a need now. It's, again, adding an additional monthly expense to the taxpayers when, I mean, everybody I know has a cell phone, so they have some kind of internet access with that. And, you know, we're back in school now. So, again, I'm just one vote and kind of, I guess, perhaps in the minority on this issue too, but for those reasons, I do not support that.
And Matt, if I may, just out of the 4 parks listed, one of the 4 we do have trackers in to see how many people are coming in and out, and that's Clippard. And right now that is one of our most used parks. And so, you know, as we look at this as well, it provides us with another thing that we can market to individuals when we're renting shelters or other activities at our park. So just something else that was in the back of our mind.
Yeah, and I saw that as a kind of a marketing addition, but, you know, again, this would be nice to have. When I was at North College Hill, I investigated bringing Wi-Fi to the whole community. It's something that, I think it originated in Florida, in like St. Petersburg or something, where they started to do that in order to draw people down. I just, again, when I said before with the master facility plan, I just think we're early. I think we have needs now that need to be addressed before we go outside that. But again, I'm just one voice.
Mr. Waller, one additional point on that. So these are, as Mr. Weckbach mentioned, these are residual funds from the last period, and they have to be spent quickly. And so one of the troubles is if we don't do a project that can be executed quickly, we will lose the money. And I agree. I don't know where the federal money is coming from. There's a lot of it floating around. But if there's money available, I would rather it go to Colerain Township than, you know, Boardman Township or Florida.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm just saying that I'm wondering if there's a use that would be more effective for this. I mean, the code on this is pretty lengthy, and I mean, you're talking about some of the issues that we have citizens talking about on a meeting by meeting basis are covered under this, like blighted properties, deteriorate. I mean, you know, I'm wondering, so I don't know when the window closes. If you have an idea when the window closes on the use of this money?
They had told us that we needed to use it by the end of June, was what we were initially told, you know, last month. And, you know, acquisition and demolition of blighted properties is something that usually takes several months to achieve.
Sure.
The public bidding process associated with sidewalks or roads or some of these other things also are several month-long processes. So it does create sort of a temporal issue for us.
But and it also includes things like things that will improve health and general welfare and things like that. And I can see that, the numbers I looked at statewide show an increase in actually, I think almost a 30 or 40% increase in overdose deaths. Is that something that, that to me is more of a need? Maybe there's a health aspect to that, because it's anything that, the way I read the title on that is, it's anything that helps improve those people's lives that live in those areas. We have some of those areas that are represented there that have the highest infant mortality rates in the county. Is there something we could do with that? I mean, that's stuff that doesn't take as long to develop. Again, I feel that internet, this would be great, but I mean, are there other things that we can do? And I get it that we have a closed window. It's closing. But I just, just for those reasons, I just think we could go back to the drawing board very quickly, I guess. But, yeah.
I think it's going to help with the installation of security cameras, because I think that's something you need for what modern cameras are.
I think you mentioned about the fund is available, and again, we're moving forward our township in modern technology in a different way, which will help our residents, especially in the park. Maybe the family can bring the children, do all kinds of activities with the children. Not necessarily they go and play on the playgrounds, or they can sit there. I think it's a great thing, something new innovation for the township to bring this modern technology.
And in the big picture of things, I think generally with respect to federal and state taxes, Colerain Township's always been kind of a donor community that paid more in federal and state taxes than we got back in grants and that type of thing, and which is fine. I would rather do that. I have a house and I've got some old stuff there that needs to be replaced. I can tell you where it all came from. I went out and bought it one piece at a time, or one room at a time. We've always paid more in taxes than we got back, so I don't have an issue, especially, we're talking about security in the parks and what happened at Heritage Park and what happened at Colerain Park. And I just think a lot of these modern security systems require this component before we could go out and get just the right security. So I intend to support it when the vote is called. I have no other comments.
Any further comment?
Nope. Thank you.
Mr. Baker, roll call, please.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
No.
Thank you, Board. The next item is a motion to issue a request for proposals for public-private partnerships for the construction of a fire station. So specifically, this motion is to look at what the process might look like. Could we find somebody with an innovative solution to building a new Station 26 that would be more cost-effective, because the private entity may be able to take advantage of tax credits or other financing sources that the township is not able to. This is something that is kind of a newer thing in government circles. It took me a little while to do some research to find some example RFPs around this, but I was able to find a few. And so we've packaged this together to see if we were to build a new Station 26, what could a creative financing structure or construction structure look like? And that request for proposals is included in your packet. Putting the RFP out does not obligate us to do anything other than just to receive bids and see what they would look like. And with that, I would recommend adoption of the motion.
A motion to issue request for proposals, public-private partnership, fire station construction.
I second it. Any discussions?
When the Board of Elections was downtown, they were in a building, there was no parking down there, and then they moved to 4700 Smith Road without constructing a building, and I believe, I don't have the details of the lease there, but it's an example of where a private entity built a building that actually works out very good for its purpose because it's all single level and it's very handicap accessible, and that's an example where a government entity, being Hamilton County, did not have to lay out big money to build a new building. They had somebody else build it for them. Granted, that particular building was existing, and so I think this is at least worth looking at to see if there's some entity out there that would benefit from building a building that we would either turn around and lease or lease to purchase or whatever, or nothing may happen from it. Who knows? But any cost that is involved with this would be borne by those who would give us a proposal for it. So at least it would give us something to look at if down the road we do actually build something. And we might find that somebody could get tax credits to build a building that could be used as a firehouse with a, we just don't know, but we're going to go to private industry and allow their innovation to rise to the top and see what they come up with, because they always have good ideas.
When I first got elected, in the year when I started my trustee job, 2018, I went around the fire station. The really thing I got looking at is Fire Station 26, which is on the Galbraith Road. I felt very sad, the environment that firefighters living in. You know, these guys protect our life, and we are obligated to give them a better environment. Then I saw that the facilities, the place they work out, the sewage drainage there, where they sleep, very compact. I was surprised during all the COVID-19 things going on, how these guys sleep, small little quarters. You know, I told them at the time, you're going to have a new fire stations. I really want to admire Jeff Mills and Chief there, Alan Walls. This guy took a big initiative to make that happen. Those guys need a new fire station. Now, I also went around, called the several townships. I told you about the Pinkleton. Actually, I was going to take Jeff, maybe Chief, and see that they built a nice fire station, $7.2 million. I talked to this guys, Fairfield, how they build the fire stations. There are some efforts. You know, you got to come up with a new ideas now. You know, what are the projects, how you get the money, and it is some. There are experts in that field. They know how you know, how to build a fire station, how to gather up money, everything like that. So these guys, Fire Station 26, need a new place. So I think this is a great opportunity for them to have one. Then again, I want to thank Chief Alan Walls and Jeff Mills to pursue this. I'll be happy as a happy man when this is built. Thank you.
Thank you for, I know I pushed hard on this, and I'm under no illusions. We may not get a single thing back, which is what I've been warned by Mr. Mills and Mr. Weckback, and that's what I'm expecting, nothing back. But, you know, I think that you have to look under every rock, and the one thing, when there was talk the last commissioner election about the stadiums becoming privately owned instead of owned by the public, the one tool that I think that, and I consulted on that a little bit, the one tool that I think that we could use to do that was the accelerated depreciation that was introduced by the Trump administration as part of his economic recovery. Now, I'm told in real estate it maybe doesn't work as easily as it does with, you know, buying capital goods like trucks and things like that. But in the past, if I'm a business and go out and buy a truck, I depreciate it over the years of the truck's life, which whatever, 9, 10 years. But the way the accelerated depreciation worked is you could deduct at that first year, the whole purchase, and that led to an influx of more capital purchases and things like that. And to me, that would be kind of the secret sauce to some type of private-public partnership. Now, spoken to a number of people that says, well, maybe it's not as generous for real estate, or it doesn't work quite as well for real estate if it's a newly built facility versus a facility that's already there. But in my view, you look and you take a chance, and I appreciate you guys for pushing that forward. And you are right a lot of the time. You're probably going to be right on this, and I'm going to have an empty mailbox at the end of this, at the end of the request for proposal process. But at least I'll feel like I've investigated, and I certainly appreciate your help with that. Thank you.
Any further discussions?
None from me.
Mr. Baker, roll call, please.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weckbach. I'd like to invite Mr. McElravy to the microphone to present the resolution authorizing an adoption of CARES Act appropriations.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening. I like you. You always bring more money.
I like your jacket, too.
Oh, well, thank you. So you may recall at our last meeting that the board adopted a resolution to reappropriate the funds that carried over from 2020 for the state CARES funding. What was not included in that resolution is that there were also some carryover encumbrances, purchase orders, and that need to be taken into account when those appropriations are established. So the resolution that is before you this evening addresses that, and that appropriates $94,516.47 from the fund rather than the $101,534.46 that was approved at the prior meeting. So the recommendation from staff is adoption of the resolution of adoption of appropriations for the CARES Act.
I would motion that we pass a resolution authorizing the adoption of appropriation from the CARES Act.
Second.
Any discussions?
None on this topic, no.
Nope.
None. Mr. Baker, roll call, please.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Thank you, Board.
Jeff, I want to point out, I think you're doing a great job back there. There was a citizen that came here earlier that questioned what you're doing, and I happen to know you're back there way more than 40 hours a week, and you had a lot of things that you've worked on. I think you're doing a great job,
Thank you. I appreciate it.
just so you know that.
Thank you, Mr.
Sure.
McElravy.
Thank you, Jeff.
The last item in new business this evening, Board, is a resolution adopting junk vehicle procedure, and the recommendation from staff is to adopt this resolution. So junk vehicles, as we've heard earlier, are an issue. We hear this quite frequently, actually, and we currently have a junk vehicle resolution that was adopted in the fall of 2003, but has not been updated since then. However, in 2008, the Ohio legislature changed the statutes that govern how junk vehicles may be dealt with by townships. One of the biggest issues that we deal with, that we are hamstrung on with our current junk vehicle resolution, is when you have a junk vehicle on private property and that property owner does not want the junk vehicle to be removed. We currently do not have the ability to go onto the property and remove the junk vehicle. This resolution is in keeping with the 2008 Ohio Revised Code update, and would allow us to deal with this this deficiency. One issue that comes up very frequently that is mentioned, well, frankly, has been mentioned to me for the last decade, is Kennedy Motors at the corner of Galbraith and Pippin. And I was just talking to our code enforcement officer, Chris Cavallero, earlier, and he mentioned to me that he thinks that there is a car there that's been there since he was a kid, and I remember that vehicle. If you, when I was a kid, it was the Bug that has the Michigan horns on it. That has been there since I walked up Pippin Avenue from Clovercrest when I was a child. I almost guarantee it. It's been there forever. So we need to have an issue. We need to have a way to resolve this issue, not just at Kennedy Motors, but throughout the township, where we where we find this on both commercial and residential property. So we believe that this resolution will give us another tool in the toolbox, and the recommendation is to approve.
I would motion that we approve a resolution adopting new Colerain Township junk vehicle procedure pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code 505.871.
I'll second.
Any discussions?
Yes, I was contacted recently, and I go out and see plenty of junk vehicles that are just out of the right-of-way in people's yards, and but the Kennedy Motors issue, I, in fact, visited with somebody Monday on that, and she was glad to hear that this was on our agenda tonight, and I actually printed it off and hand-delivered a copy of it to her and asked her to come to the meeting, and I don't see her here, but I think that there's more than one resident that'll be glad we are taking this step, so.
I've also heard this frequently, and I've kind of felt the frustration of kind of being hamstrung on what exactly is a junk vehicle, what's not, and I think this expands it a little bit so that we can encompass more.
Yep.
It's Matt.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Matt. Then again, this motion, this plan, just comes under the 2021 strategic planning, which is clean, beautification, economic growth. And if we, all along every meetings, everything we do, Jackie, all doing is focus towards the clean beautifications, working with the business community and the residential. We form that code enforcement with the law enforcement. It's all going toward, this is also Colerain, and the process we're doing is great. The more authority, we using the ORC 501, something, right? 501 something, I don't know, I had my laptop.
505-871.
Yes, yeah. And we're following the ORC guidelines, but you give some more authority for the township, we go through the process. So if we need to get rid of the junk cars parked on that property in the driveway like that, and we see that mostly in a Northbrook area. Last year we used to get a lot of complaints. People come and address this. They are very, very frustrated. But this resolution, this new step you're taking, give more leverage for the township to act on quickly.
Sir.
Good. Okay. Any further discussions?
None from me.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. And thank you certainly to John Dieters did a great deal of research on this and was able to present us with this new option, which I appreciate. Okay, gentlemen, the next items are on the consent agenda. And so we recommend approval of all consent items. The first one is a new hire in the police department. It's a police officer. The position was advertised. There was a written examination, physical agility test, oral board, background investigation, truth verification, and interview with the chief. All that resulted in a conditional offer of employment to Summer Jenkins, which, if approved, she would be eligible for employment on 5/12/21, that's tomorrow, and will work 40 hours a week at a rate of $25.48 per hour. She would serve a 1-year probationary period that's contingent upon the successful passage of a medical and psychological evaluation. We also have another police officer recommendation to hire. This would be for Mr. Roger Epure. If approved, he'd be eligible for employment tomorrow, 5/12/21, would work 40 hours per week at a rate of $25.48 per hour. There would be a 1-year probationary period, and the offer would be contingent upon successful passage of medical and psychological evaluation. We also have a new hire in the Public Services Department. That would be for a seasonal maintenance worker position. There was a conditional offer of employment that was extended to Cody Brown. The wage for this job is $12.50 per hour for 40 hours per week throughout the season. If approved this evening, he would be eligible to begin work May 12th, 2021. The next item on the consent agenda is the final version of the Rumpke, the contract with Rumpke for the Residential Solid Waste District. As mentioned, it is substantially in the same form as you saw last time, but critically is missing that 10-cent fee that was included in the initial draft. Next, we have a contract with KZF for the for grant writing services. This would be very much aligned with the presentation we heard earlier. We were going to be applying for grant funds through SORTA, and we hope that they are very successful with that. And it looks like I missed another contract, which is with Plattenberg. It's a $3,000 contract to have access to a CPA for questions throughout the year. So that is everything on the consent agenda this evening. Recommendation is to approve.
I motion that we would approve consent items A through F.
I second it. Any discussions?
Yes, one of the other things about the Rumpke contract that is not in there is the way that it was structured was if you had a service issue, you called that third party to get your service issue resolved. I would always rather call Rumpke. If they missed my pickup, I would rather call them. They know where their drivers are at any given moment, and I think I would get quicker response. So that was the 10 cents I wanted out of there, but also I think our residents would prefer direct contact with Rumpke if they have a service issue, and they've always been real good about responding to, calls for service. I know there's a little street down in the south part of the township that their driver had been missing pickups because you can't really see the four houses back there, and very recently there was a call made to Rumpke, and it got resolved the next morning at 7 in the morning because there were some cans that were left out, and they do a great job of responding. So that would be my comment on the Rumpke contract. Thank you for all the work you and Jeff Weckbach put into it. I think you got it where at least I wanted it. So I don't know if there's any other comments.
Matt, any comments, Matt?
No, just good to see new hires in police, and I'm just very impressed with Chief Denny starting to issue the use of force statistics. I think that makes us a community leader, and I think these two new hires are stepping into a very good situation. Grant writing, I think it's something that that we need to take full advantage of whenever we can. So I support the consent items is submitted. Yeah, I'm fine.
Sorry. I'm looking at the contract, page 28, which Dan earlier mentioned about that 10 cents, which is practically when the people have the grievances, they can call. That it's like a mediate third party. But in the section 240, it says the contractor's field route supervisor will be responsible for adjudicating customer grievances.
Adjudicating, Raj.
Adjudicating. Thank you, Dan. At the township's request, the field route supervisor will join the township in meeting with the aggrieved customer within 24 hours notification to resolve a complaint about spillage, refusal to serve, or a missed pickup, so on it says. So this is something new, Jeff, in our, do they?
No, I don't think so. I mean, this is typical to how we would handle it in the past.
So it's always somebody will be there in the township?
We would typically coordinate with our municipal representative, which is Dean Ferrier. So, Jeff Weckbach handles the management of this contract, and oftentimes we'll get calls from residents. It's similar to what you described. I left my cans out, and they didn't get picked up, and we're able to mediate that with the township, or with Rumpke.
Yeah, it's one of the columns says you'll be at the township, or you designate people. So the grievances will be properly handled, right?
Yes.
From the residents.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's been a case in the last 5 years that we haven't been able to resolve. I can't think of one.
I mean, this pickups, they've got their 24-hour window, and almost every time there's a notice on here, they respond.
Yeah. And then, you know, another issue that has come up a lot has been early morning pickups, right? I get a lot of calls. We get a lot of calls about early morning pickups, and it is frustrating because sometimes it does take a couple of weeks for that route supervisor to drill it into the heads of the folks that are running the routes. Like, you cannot start before, you cannot get into the Colerain Township communities before I think it's 6 a.m. So, you know, sometimes it's frustrating. It takes a couple of weeks, but we're able to get those issues resolved.
Also, you mentioned on the page 26, the contractor shall provide the field route supervisor with a cell phone equipped with a voicemail. So they also will be responsible, right?
Yes.
So, okay, you also get a penalty, failure by the field route supervisor to respond in all communication with the township within 1 hour may be subject to liquidated damages, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Good. So another thing, the contract, like I mentioned about the last meeting, calling different township, checking with the rates. Now we have on this rate, trash pickup, the recycling program, also 1 month free the bulk pickup, bulk trash pickup. So, and also, and certain people cannot bring to the curbside, they can go down up to 75 feet or so to pick up the garbage. So these are the added factor. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Mr. Baker, roll call, please.
Mr. Unger.
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal.
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Thank you, board. We've accomplished a lot tonight.
Then, one more thing, can I add now? I'll pass. And that the last item that contract on that KCF for SORTA grant writing, and Jackie's heading, like I mentioned earlier, and we did the same thing to get this $700,000 grant for the Pippin Road, the sidewalk from the Northwest High School to the Stribble Road. We need to have this kind of technical people to write exact amount, how much money you need. When to pull out, there's a lot of factor involved. So that's a good thing that we did. And Jackie, thank you for the amazing work to hit this project.
That's a good point, Mr. Rajagopal, because most of these applications need to include an engineer's estimate of cost as part of the application. And so, we can't produce that in-house because we don't have a PE on staff. Right. So, yeah. And I think that's when compared to the amount of money that we're going after, that's a modest amount, I think.
Thank you. Mr. Baker, roll call, please. Oh, you already did that. Okay, thank you. All right. Next on the agenda is fiscal office report.
Thank you, board. I'll be brief as I can. First, we have fulfilled 90 public records requests so far this year. Secondly, we received 2 liquor license requests with no objection from Chief Denny. One, Peach Grove Market, and the other, Bob Evans. Who knew? Pretty excited about that.
I'm sorry, did you say Bob Evans?
I did, yes. And lastly, I wanted just to talk about, briefly about the Wirt Park garden boxes that are available. There was something set out on social media and on a website. You can find more information on the website under Parks. I just want to mention how cool of a deal that is, because I try to, I grow a garden at my house each year with my daughters just to try to teach them how easy it is to grow food and to see, to see their reaction to it, and to taste the strawberries and peppers and tomatoes and things like that. It's a really cool experience. And I think that's a great opportunity for people who may not have the ability to grow something at their house to rent a garden box. It's $25 for the year. There's water on site, but the only caveat to that is you have to take care of your own garden box. If you don't, there's a certain period of time there that they'll give you leeway, and otherwise they'll reassign it because they don't want the garden box to go unused or wasted. So I just would encourage anyone who's interested in doing something like that. It's very easy to do. I know that it's, Wart Park is located on Galbraith, so it may not be conducive to someone that's across town to, take care of, something in the middle of the summer to get over there to water everything, because you're responsible for your own garden. But there are still plenty of space available. I think on average, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're like 4x6. Some might even be 6x6 garden boxes. These are significant. I mean, you can grow a lot of food in that small amount. Mine at my house, I have one 4x4 and one 4x6, and I grow more cucumbers and tomatoes and zucchini than I could possibly eat. So I give most of it away, but it's just neat to see them grow, and the girls love it. And to eat strawberries that you grow, it's just something a little bit different about that. But anyway, I would encourage that. So if you go on to the website under parks, you'll find more information about that. And there, again, there are still plenty of spaces available for $25. You can't build one for that. If you tried to build one for that right now with the cost of lumber,
Yeah.
it would take you 4 years to get your money back out of it probably. So I would just encourage everybody to look into that. So that's all I have.
That's great information, Jeff. Thanks.
Raj, I have one other comment before we adjourn.
Sure.
Thank you, Raj, for giving me the floor for a minute. About a week and a half ago, we lost a marvelous, very colorful Colerain Township resident, a guy by the name of Ron Emerson. Ron was a neighbor just down Springdale Road, and a very colorful personality, always had plenty to say, always worked as an employee of the Board of Elections on Election Day. He was at one of the precincts at White Oak Christian Church. Ron was a proud, active, and vibrant retired teamster, and always wasn't shy about his political opinions. And to his widow and to his very large family, I'd like to extend my sympathy to you. And those are my other comments I wanted to make, Raj.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes?
I will did you motion, Matt?
Yeah.
I will second it.
In discussions?
It's 9:50 on May 11th. That's the way to get the meeting
The
done.
meeting is adjourned. Thank you for. Oh, we got, Mr. Baker?
Mr. Unger.
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal.
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
All right.
Meeting is adjourned.